Hello to all fans of Naruto Lemon. I will post all Naruto Lemon Yaoi, Yuri, or Naruko Lemon stories only on the Boosty channel because Uncle YouTube condemns this. Therefore, I invite everyone who wants Naruto Lemon content to my Boosty channel. Good luck.
お前はどこまで見えている。俺の死に様か。
Apparently he also noticed similarities with Kurama's chakra. Kankuro, don't disgrace our village, the newcomer said quietly. Moving a little closer, I was able to see him a little better. He had red hair, turquoise eyes with black eyeliner around the eyes from lack of sleep, beige and brown clothes, and a strange-looking vessel on his back that looked like a pumpkin, sandy color. He also had the protector of the village hidden in the sand. I noticed the same protectors on the guy and the girl who stood on the ground and looked at the red-haired man with horror in their eyes. So they are from Suna? But Gaara, the one called Kankuro, tried to object, but it was clear from him that he was afraid of the so-called Gaara. That's when Shisui and I came up. What's going on here? Shirkuan asked, looking menacingly at the trio of Suna genin and the hiding children. Kankuro wanted to say something, apparently unflattering, but stopped short when he noticed the jounin vests we were wearing. I usually don't wear it, but today for some reason I put it on, I don't even know why. Well, this is basically not as important as the fact that you need to understand this whole situation that has arisen. This boy bumped into them and instead of apologizing, he was rude, Kankuro said, to which I just chuckled and looked expressively at the trio of children. It is not true. He confronted us himself, and then he grabbed me by the scruff of the neck and started threatening me. The victim exclaimed. So, I'm already completely confused about who is to blame for what. Konohamaru-kun is telling the truth, the girl said quietly. So that's who he reminded me of. This boy is the grandson of the Hokage, who is constantly trying to attack his grandfather. So it is. It seems you have arrived for an exam, am I correct? Shisui asked, looking at the trio of genin. They only nodded, after which the Uchiha continued, do you know that you attacked the grandson of our Hokage? This means that you are setting up not only your teacher, but also your village and the Kazekage. If this situation comes to Hokage-sama and the elders, said Shisui, I just nodded, leaving everything to be decided by the guy. Still, in this he will be more experienced than me. We are not to blame for anything. The girl exclaimed, looking displeasedly at the Uchiha. I noticed how he activated his Sharingan and was already looking at the dojutsu. I am from the Uchiha clan, and I can calmly test her memory, and something tells me that Konohamaru-kun's words were true. So let's apologize to the guys and silently leave, if you don't want to go to the interrogation room with an accusation of attacking the grandson of Hokage-sama, said the Uchiha, flashing his Sharingan. I smiled and looked at the white-faced genin of another village. Please forgive us. This won't happen again, said the boy who interested me, looking unkindly at his brother and sister. Keep in mind that from now on we will carefully monitor you so that you don't do anything else. So, it's in your best interest not to get into this kind of trouble or any more, Shisui warned, narrowing his deactivated eyes. We're waking you up, be careful, the red-haired guy bowed. I think his name is Gaara. Let's go, he said, turning to his relatives. They shuddered and hurried after their comrade, never looking back. Having waited until the genin were out of sight, we turned to the guys, Sakura and Sasuke, who jumped from the tree during the conversation between Shisui and the strangers. Sakura, you're doing great, but you don't need to be so rash. Next time, don't rush to save, but think through a plan and quietly rescue the one you want. Sasuke, you did a good job too, I praised, looking at Uchiha Jr. and Haruno. Afterwards we looked at the quiet baby. Well? And what do you say in your defense? I asked, looking at them with a menacing look. You won't do anything to me. I am the grandson of the Hokage, Konohamaru. The boy exclaimed, looking at me defiantly. I snorted, closing my eyes and sighing heavily. These are the kind of people I don't like, literally at all. What? Scared? he said, satisfied, smiling. But he said this in vain. I looked around, noticing how Sasuke flinched and smiled nervously at Shisui, after which I looked at the boy and began to slowly move towards him. I don't care who you are. Be at least the son of the daimyo. This does not mean that you will escape punishment and that you can say whatever you want. I said and hit him hard on the head. How infuriating this child is, who imagines himself to be God knows what. My dad was the fourth Hokage, but I don't shout about it at every turn. The fact that I am the daughter of the Hokage is known to a limited circle of people, and I am in no hurry to talk about it. When the time comes, everyone will know everything. And it's much later than now. Snorting, I turned around and headed to Ichiraku, where we were actually going some time ago. Shisui immediately followed me, hugging me around the waist, just like he did before the whole situation. Sasuke didn't say a word, just like Sakura. They just looked at the children strangely as they passed them. We left, leaving the kids alone. The mood deteriorated because of this Konohamaru, that I even didn't want to eat ramen, which is what I actually voiced. Let's go to another establishment, shall we? I didn't want to eat ramen anymore, I said, to which everyone agreed. We arrived at the coffee shop where I and other ANBU often gather to relax. After looking around, we found a free table, which we hurried to sit down at. A minute later, the waitress approached us, asking about our order. Please bring 6 servings of dango, 3 bottles of sake, and 8 servings of beef with a side dish, I ordered. The waitress wrote everything down and left. I caught Shisui's dissatisfied glance. Naruto, we could have done without sake, he said, and I just snorted. Well, Shisui, 3 bottles won't do anything, I said, looking at him with a pleading look. Well, how can he not understand that only sake can lift a low mood? And it's below the plinth and is sliding even lower. It seems like we've already talked about this topic, he said deceptively calmly. Narrowing his eyes. They said, and you allowed me to drink, by the way, I said, putting my hands on my hips and looking at the guy defiantly. Although this position was a little uncomfortable, since we were sitting at the table. But what can you do to stop Shisui from raising this topic again? But apparently my pose did not impress the Uchiha, who frowned even more. Allowed. But he allowed it only for an occasion, a holiday, and only if I was present, he said, as if he were blunt. And my bottom feels that I'm not happy at home. I love him, of course, but I also want to rest. And sake is the best way to relax, in my opinion. Shisui, I won't be alone, but with you. I brought up my last argument, which I hoped would help me. Okay, since you already ordered it, drink it. But half with me. And a very serious conversation awaits you at home, the Uchiha said, turning away from me. But I didn't feel any joy that he allowed it. Because I understood that there would be a scandal at home, which I wanted to avoid. I feel like Shisui is angry at me, which makes me feel bad. And at this moment I understand that I shouldn't have ordered sake, but there's nothing you can do. While I was thinking about the whole situation, I heard a quiet conversation between Sasuke and Sakura. After listening, I realized that starting a quarrel in Sakura's presence was not the best idea. Sasuke-kun, do they always quarrel like this? Haruno asked, turning to the Uchiha. He looked at her and turned his gaze to us, not understanding what happened. Apparently he didn't pay any attention to this scene. Noticing a dissatisfied Shisui with narrowed eyes, anger splashing in them, and me depressed, Sasuke understood everything. No. They don't quarrel at all unless it concerns Naruto Haime's entertainment in the form of drinking and gambling. Before Shisui found out about her addictions, there was not a single quarrel. And even now there aren't really any of them, and if they do happen, they are quickly reconciled, Sasuke answered, without taking his eyes off what he was doing. And he, by the way, was reading some scroll with the emblems of the Uchiha clan. Most likely it has something to do with their dojutsu. That's when our order was brought. In general, we spent the day quite fun and fruitfully. Sakura showed a completely different side of herself, which was quite unusual, but sometimes I noticed sparks of the old Haruno jumping through, which is quite funny to watch. Sasuke still didn't trust the changed girl, so he often twitched and tried to change places with one of us, but stopped himself. Me and Shisui were talking about nothing and watching Sakura and Sasuke while drinking sake. And now, having paid for the order, we left the coffee and said goodbye to Sakura. Sasuke, take Sakura home, otherwise it's already late outside, I said, slightly slurring my tongue. He looked at me hauntedly, but still agreed. They headed in the opposite direction to us, and we went towards the Uchiha quarter. Arriving home and taking off my shoes, I headed to the kitchen to put the kettle on. Shisui followed me, and when I was about to pour water into the kettle, he said, "I hope you haven't forgotten that you have a conversation waiting for you?" Said the Uchiha, as if he hadn't drunk at all. I lowered my head, sat on a chair, put my hands on the table and crossed my fingers. Without raising my head, I said, "Forgive me, Shirkuan." There was silence, after which a heavy sigh was heard. "Naru, I care about you. Even though you look older than your age, even though you have all the body signs of a 16-year-old girl, you still remain the same age as Sasuke. And you drink alcohol in excessive quantities. Okay, games, but alcohol is no joke. I don't mind, drink, but only when there is a reason. For example, holidays. Naru, let's listen to my words, and we won't touch on this topic anymore." He sat down opposite me and covered my hands with his palm. I raised my head and looked at the guy, thinking about what I had said. "Shirkuan, I can't just give up the habit. I got it after Alex, Itachi, and you died. Sake helped me numb the pain of loss. Without him, I was tormented by nightmares, flashbacks, and I didn't even really eat. I felt really bad, so I found 2 ways to distract myself. And they helped me. Soon I returned to my old way of life, although there was almost nothing left of my old self. Although I recovered from the loss, the habit remained, and the nightmares did not stop tormenting me. But now, I'm trying to improve, to become the Naruto you knew me. But this will take time. So please don't pester me," I said, looking into his eyes. I understood that he was worried about me, that he was worried. I understood all the words spoken, but he must understand me too. To understand what I had to go through, that I had to get used to the idea that they were no longer there and that I would not see them again. And even though Rakuta-sama gave me a gift of sorts, it will take me a while for everything to return to normal. I understand you, and for that I apologize. But still, let's not drink without reason, I beg you very much, said Shisui. I looked at the guy for a minute, then silently stood up and, without saying a word, headed into the room. As I walked up the stairs, I heard the front door open and close, followed by Sasuke's voice and his question. "Did you quarrel?" I didn't hear anything else, because I went into the room and closed the door. I didn't undress and take a shower, because I was very tired. I just fell on the bed and curled up into a ball, silently crying. I don't know how much time passed, but I didn't notice how I fell asleep. But before I completely went into dreamland, I heard the door to the room open and quiet footsteps. The day was not going well from the very beginning. And all because the arrogant red alarm clock woke me up, and I managed to fall out of bed and hit my nose painfully on the floor. After which he disappeared in a direction unknown to me, from which I did not have time to yell at him, expressing everything I thought about him. Somehow I got up and looked around the room I was in. In principle, I didn't see anything new, except that on the bedside table, there was a porcelain vase with scarlet roses and white lilies. The bouquet was large and chic, which couldn't help but please me, and therefore my mood rose a little higher from 0. Smiling, I took my things and headed to the bathroom to clean up and freshen up. To be honest, bouquets on bedside tables are not uncommon for me, but mostly they were small and not so bright and noticeable. Cornflowers, bluebells, tulips, peonies, daffodils, forget-me-nots, and everything like that. But such a bouquet was rare, which involuntarily made me smile every time. This may seem strange, wrong, or something else to some, but for me it has become so natural that I look forward to the morning of every day with childish joy. After all, each time the bouquet changes, becoming more and more original. I really like this. After getting out of the shower, I headed to the kitchen, where an incredibly delicious smell emanated from. In our house, only two people know how to cook so deliciously, Sasuke and Shisui. The second cooks very rarely, and the first mostly in the morning. So this activity passed on to me. I, of course, also know how to cook, but much weaker compared to the two Uchihas. But they don't complain, and for me, that's enough. For all my reasoning, I didn't notice how I came into the kitchen. Standing in the doorway, I watched Shisui, wearing a white apron with pink flowers, set the table. This sight was so cute that it was impossible not to smile. "Good morning, Shirkuan," I said, walking into the kitchen and sitting down at the table. The Uchiha, noticing me, smiled a friendly smile, and, having completely arranged the cutlery, came up to me and touched my lips with a weightless kiss. "Congratulations, Naru. And also happy birthday," the man said, handing me a small long box. And to be honest, I completely forgot about him. There's been too much going on lately, which has left me very overwhelmed. "Thank you, dear," I said, accepting the gift. Having opened the box, I saw a gold chain with a heart-shaped pendant, which had small stones that matched the color of my eyes. "Wow. What a beauty," I said, taking out the pendant and looking at it in more detail. "This is not just a pendant." "Open it," he said. I looked at him blankly, but still followed his advice. Opening the heart, I saw two photographs. They were small, but very significant. The first photo was divided into 4 squares. The first square showed Sasuke, Itachi, Shisui, and Alex. On the second, the parents of Sasuke and Itachi, as well as the parents of Shisui. On the third, my parents. On the fourth, Kurama. The second photo was divided into 2 parts. The first one was me, Shisui, and our children, Akira and Ichiro, who were still very small. The second half showed us all together, namely me, Shisui, Alex, Itachi, Sasuke, Kurama, Akira with Ichiro, Kakashi, Yukiri, Sakura, Jiraiya, and Tsunade. What appeared before my eyes almost made me cry with happiness. After all, these are the people dearest to me. Those who became a real family for me, and those who have been gone for a long time, are the most important to me, and especially the memories of them. Although I don't remember my parents, and didn't even know them, they are the ones for me who gave life, didn't give up and did everything so that I could live and not worry about anything. Although I had to go through hatred, pain, loneliness, thanks to them, I became who I am, and without them I would not have such a wonderful family and so many good friends. "Thank you, Shirkuan," I said, closing the pendant, rising from the chair and kissing the man, thereby showing how happy I was with the gift and how much I love him. Pulling away from the Uchiha, I turned my back to him, pulling my hair forward. "Will you button it up?" I asked, smiling slightly. Shisui wordlessly took the chain and, throwing it over his head, fastened the clasp in one smooth movement. "I would like to spend this day with you, and in the evening to gather all of our people and have a celebration. You do not mind?" said the man. I looked at him with radiant eyes, in which boundless happiness was read. "What are we talking about? I am in favor with all my hands and feet," I exclaimed, sitting down at the table and starting to eat breakfast. "By the way, where are the children?" I asked, looking at my husband sitting opposite me. "Alex took them. He said that he would walk with them until the evening." "Kurama went with them," he said, pausing from eating. "So, he woke me up in a not very pleasant way, and then left so that he wouldn't get hurt? Well, you shabby fox. As soon as it catches my eye, it will immediately be left without fur. Clear. Where will we go?" I asked, looking at Shisui. I became very interested in what he had in store for me this time. "I think I'll keep this a secret. I'll just say that you should dress simpler and lighter, and also put on a swimsuit," the Uchiha said with a mysterious smile. I wonder what he came up with. "Okay, I've just finished eating, I'll quickly go get dressed." He has a very mysterious smile on his face. I quickly got up from the table, put the dishes in the sink and wanted to wash them, but Shisui didn't let me do it, saying that the birthday girl shouldn't do anything that day, much less clean up. So he gently sent her into the room to get dressed. I didn't mind, so I quickly headed into the room. Without thinking twice, I chose shorts and a t-shirt, and put on a swimsuit underneath. Having tied my hair into a high ponytail, although even in this hairstyle it reached my knees, I went downstairs. Shisui was already standing in the corridor with several packages. "Aren't you going to change your clothes?" I asked, approaching the man. "No, I got dressed when I got up," he said, and after a moment of silence, he continued. "Well, let's go to?" "Yeah," I answered both questions. Shisui took the bags, letting me go ahead. He followed me out and closed the door. We walked through the Uchiha quarter in silence, and when we left it, we began to talk and joke about completely different topics. I don't know why, but when we walk around the block, we are often silent, and as soon as we leave the Uchiha territory, we immediately begin to communicate. Strange, don't you think? Walk along the streets of Konoha, we didn't pay any attention to passers-by. More precisely, they tried not to. The residents kept congratulating me on my birthday, wishing me something, and saying something else. To be honest, I didn't really remember it, and I didn't really listen. So we arrived at the gates of Konoha only 2 hours later. As usual, two Chunin stood there and watched the gate. Shisui approached them and said something, heading towards the exit, beckoning me to follow him. "So where are we going?" I asked when I caught up with him. He smiled mysteriously again without answering. "Well, I am gnawing at curiosity, which I cannot quench due to the fact that my husband does not want to share information about his own surprise." So we walked the rest of the way in silence. Shisui suddenly stopped, causing me to bump into him. Rubbing my bruised nose, I looked at the Uchiha. "Well, why did you get up?" I asked, dissatisfied. Still, if he hits his nose a second time, it's not good. "We have arrived," he said, moving a little to the side. I looked at the place where they came and gasped. This was a large clearing with all possible flowers, which looked very beautiful and harmonious. And almost at the very end there was a large river, which barely swayed from a fleeting light breeze. Shisui headed towards the river, and I stood and looked at this beauty. Shirkuan had already laid out a blanket, put a basket of food on the blanket, took out a bottle of some drink and fruit, and then headed towards me. "This is my surprise. We'll spend this day here until the evening," he said, hugging me around the waist. I didn't even notice how he took off his clothes, leaving him in only his swimming trunks. "Thank you for such a wonderful gift," I said and smiled and kissed my husband. Having pulled away, we headed towards the rug. I managed to take off my shorts and t-shirt, remaining in my swimsuit. We talked slowly, about everything and nothing at the same time, drinking wine and eating fruit, meat and much more. Then Shisui stood up, grabbed me in his arms, and quickly walked towards the water. "Hey! What did you think of this?" I exclaimed when strong male hands grabbed me by the waist and threw me over his shoulder. "Put me on the ground, quickly!" I exclaimed again when I realized where he was taking me. But apparently my indignation did not convince him, since Shisui didn't even think about stopping. I didn't see his face, but for some reason I had a strong feeling that he was smiling. "Shisui, can you even hear me?" But I was again ignored. "Ah. Your mother." "Shisui," I exclaimed when the Uchiha threw me into the water. "This doesn't fit into any gates anymore." "Well, stick with me." I floated to the surface, and then sprayed the Uchiha from head to toe. I managed to do this, because he stood right next to the shore and didn't even think about leaving. Then I grabbed his leg and dragged him into the water. And now I looked with a satisfied face at Shisui, who was swearing through his teeth. "Ha ha ha," I laughed, looking at my wet husband, who had pebbles and some grass on his head. "Well, that's it, hold on," he exclaimed, after which he began to walk towards me. Noticing this, I began to move away, but having stumbled, I flew towards the entrance. Shisui was not taken aback. He began to drown me as a joke, but I did not lag behind him. Cheerful laughter, splashing water and exclamations echoed across the clearing. We had fun. It felt like we were children again who had come to the river to relax and have fun. At that moment it was all too early. No matter how old we were, the main thing was that we were having fun as before, carefree and joyful. Having swum to our heart's content, we crawled ashore to dry off. The day was already drawing to a close. We'll just have time to dry off and get ready to go home and continue the holiday with our whole family and close friends. And so, standing on the threshold of the house, I opened the door, walked into the living room, turned on the light, and then I heard firecrackers and a cry. Surprise! Happy birthday! Everyone was here. Itachi, Sasuke, Tsunade, Jiraiya, Yukiri, Kurama, Kakashi, Sakura, Alex, and our children Akira and Ichiro. I did not expect such a turn of events, which brought tears of happiness to my eyes. Thank you, I said and smiled. Then we started having fun, playing various games, and participating in competitions. When the time approached 10, I sent the children to bed, but tomorrow, they have to get up early and go to the academy. The guests had not yet left, and I didn't mind. Let them stay as long as they want, because they are the most dear people to me. Shirkuan, I'll go and put the children to bed. I'll be there soon, I told Shisui, and, after kissing him on the cheek, I went to get the restless ones. Akira, Ichiro, it's time to go to bed, I said, approaching them, attracting attention to myself. Well, Mom, can we play a little more? They began to whine. Honestly, I don't mind, but tomorrow they won't wake up and will definitely be late for the academy, or they won't even want to go study at all. No play. You were told to go to bed. Listen to what your mother says. So stop whining and go to the room, Shisui said, knowing that I couldn't refuse them today. Pop, please, the children said at the same time. That's what naughty people are. They will always find benefits for themselves, and will use my reliability to the fullest. After all, this only happens on some holidays, when all close friends and family gather. On other days, I am quite strict and don't allow them too much. No dads please. March to the bedroom, Shisui said. He always helps me out at such moments, and for that I am grateful to him. Akira and Ichiro hung their heads and went to their room. I turned to my husband, smiled at him and followed the children. Entering the nursery, I noticed that they were already lying on the beds. Approaching them, I kissed each one on the forehead and stroked their hair. Don't be so offended. I know that you won't wake up early for the academy tomorrow if you still stay to play. Let's do this. When you have your next birthday, I will allow you to stay with us until the end, and the next day I will allow you not to go to the academy. Agreed? I suggested, to somehow calm them down. Of course, they don't cry, they haven't been 3 years old, but it was clear that they were upset. Will you really allow it? Ichiro asked and looked at me incredulously. True, I agreed and smiled. Won't you forget? Akira asked, also looking at us with disbelief. I was offended by them for not trusting my words, which made my ears twitch and my tail lash out. And I won't forget anything. I give my word. I exclaimed, raising my fist up, and my tail began to thrash harder. Then we'll wait for our birthday, they said together and kissed me on the cheeks, after which they covered themselves and closed their eyes. After sitting a little longer, I got up and quietly headed out of the room, trying not to make noise. I closed the door. I sighed and mentally slapped myself. Shisui will be dissatisfied with my promise, he will definitely be dissatisfied. But nothing could be changed, so I headed into the living room to join the others. Everything is fine? Shisui asked. Apparently he noticed how my tail was flicking nervously. And he, the infection, is the only one who betrays my nervousness. Yes, everything is fine. Let me tell you tomorrow? Today we need to have fun. I smiled and hurried away, or rather headed to the group that was going to organize some kind of competition. So we had a fun time. The guests left around 3 o'clock in the morning, and we stayed to clean up. But we didn't bother for a long time. More precisely, we spat on everything and left everything as it was, deciding to clean up when we woke up. We drank enough, so we immediately headed to the room. Having dismantled the bed, we lay down, just like that, without undressing. I didn't even have the strength to do that. Thank you for such a wonderful day. I liked it very much. I said and kissed with all the love and gratitude that I have. Everything is just for you, he said and kissed her again. We lay there for some time just like that. Not talking about anything, listening to the silence that arose in the house. It was cozy and warm as never before. The children are sleeping. Kurama is also sleeping either in my subconscious or in the basket. The guests all went home, cheerful and joyful. And I was doubly happy. After all, these same guests were my friends. And if they are happy, then I am happy too. And Shisui is nearby, the children are in the next room. What could be more wonderful and happier than this moment? Thinking about it like that, I didn't even notice how I fell asleep in the strong and warm arms of my husband. POV of Saxony. When Naruto Harem quickly ran out of the hospital, I was very scared. I didn't know where she could be. Therefore, I decided to walk around Konoha and look for her on the streets. But I never found it. And all the most interesting things began when I came home, and after a while the door opened and Naruto Harem appeared on the threshold, and not alone. At first I thought that I was seeing a hallucination, then the thought came to my mind that it was a ghost, and only after one fainting spell, when I was preparing to fall into unconsciousness again, they explained everything to me. Honestly, this is hard to believe, but not impossible, since all the words spoken were confirmed by the resurrected Shisui. From that moment on, everything started spinning and spinning. Naruto Harem informed us about the upcoming Chunin exam, which will be attended by genin from other villages. And this is a good chance to show yourself. True, the news that Naruto Harem will also take part as the third member of the team puzzled me a little, but also made me happy. True, not for long. This is all nothing if it weren't for this pink-haired fool who pisses off the whole team, including the sensei. Yes, she even managed to get Shisui-san, which, in principle, I thought was impossible. Naruto Harem assigned us to teachers. I train with Shisui-san, and she personally trains with Sakura. True, on the very first day, Harem sent her to the world of summoning for the entire 2 months. Well, now at least I can breathe easy and take a break from her pestering. I even forgot about her for a while, completely immersed in training, trying to become stronger so as not to disgrace the Uchiha clan, Naruto Harem and the team. Kakashi-sensei visited occasionally, gave valuable advice in training, showed new techniques. But mostly he came to Shisui-san and Naruto Harem. I don't know what they were talking about, but Kakashi-sensei left with a frown, and his interlocutors walked around all day, thoughtful and very puzzled by something. But that's none of my business. If necessary, they will tell you themselves. Also during these 2 months, Shisui-san learned about Naruto Harem's preferences. That day there was a notable scandal, which ended in a strong quarrel. It was the first time they had quarreled and on such a large scale. They didn't speak to each other for about 2 weeks. What can I say, they avoided each other, and if they met, they ignored them. Sometimes it happened that the quarrel began again, thereby inciting it even more. On the one hand, it was fun to watch them, but on the other hand, I didn't know how to reconcile them. All my attempts ended in scandal. After a week of quarrel, Naruto Harem packed her things and left home. I don't know where she lived for the next few days, so I can't say. After 2 weeks, they made peace. True, I didn't catch this moment, but when I learned that they finally got back together, I was glad. Still, watching them quarrel, swear, make trouble, ignore, and disperse was terrible. But from that moment on, the two did not quarrel anymore. Naruto Harem and Shisui-san found a compromise, thanks to which there is no trace of quarrels. True, Naruto herself will never admit that this quarrel happened and that they parted for at least some time. If you ask her about this, she will say that Shisui did not speak to her for several days, and she herself behaved quietly and begged for forgiveness. I don't know what she's thinking, but from her face, which I saw after their reconciliation, I immediately realized that this scandal would not go beyond the house. It will come out, but in a slightly distorted form. She will arrange this with great pleasure. And now, we are standing at the training ground where Sakura disappeared, going to the recruiting animals. Honestly, it makes me a little nervous. Naruto Harem said that she should change, but I have little faith in that. Well, a person cannot change beyond recognition in such a short period of time. While I was indulging in my thoughts, Haruno had already appeared at the training ground. After listening, I realized that she had become more serious, learned to address her superiors with respect, and became calmer. And most importantly, it doesn't stick to me. I think this is a huge achievement for her. Although, something tells me that this is not good. As they say, the calm before the storm. Walking to Ramanea, we met a sand team. Fortunately, Naruto Harem and Shisui-san were with us, and they resolved the whole situation. And Sakura showed her good side. And this is where it all began. Naruto-sama suggested we go to another establishment, to which we agreed. There, in addition to food, she ordered 3 bottles of sake. I didn't particularly follow them, and I was busy, but Sakura's question forced me to pay attention to them. And I didn't really like it. Judging by Shisui-san's look, Naruto Harem was in big trouble. The main thing is that the same quarrel does not happen again. A few hours later, I was sent to accompany Sakura home. Of course, this didn't make me happy, but I understood that they needed time to talk and discuss everything. Only later did I realize that it was my mistake to leave them alone. Sasuke-kun, tell me, what kind of person is Naruto-sensei? Sakura asked me, breaking me out of my thoughts. I would tell you, but I can't. Naruto Harem might come to me if she finds out, I answered, remaining calm outwardly, but inside, everything was turning upside down with worry and excitement. But she won't know. Please tell me, Haruno asked. I sighed heavily, cursing everything in the world, but I had to answer. True, I will only say general features that are known to everyone. She is quite withdrawn because of one incident, although she used to be cheerful and at the same time, calm. Naruto Harem is serious, analyzes this or that situation well, finding a way out of seemingly the most dead-end and hopeless situations. She loves gambling, in which she constantly wins, as well as drinking. Naruto Harem, along with my brother, Shisui-san and Kakashi-san, was an ANBU, where she became quite famous. However, if you make her angry, then you have only one way out, run away without looking back. She has a very heavy hand and a bad character. I think this is quite enough, I said, continuing to walk. Here Sakura stopped near an inconspicuous house. We came. Thank you for seeing me off and thank you for telling me a little about Naruto-sensei, Haruno said and, waving goodbye, ran home. After standing for a while, I went home. Now I was not walking slowly, as before, but quickly, almost running. In a few minutes, I reached the house from which I could hear a conversation in a raised voice. A minute later everything stopped, then a sob and Naruto's quiet voice were heard. I didn't dare to go in, but still, gathering my will into a fist, I opened the door and walked into the hallway. By this point it was all over and Naruto Harem was going up to her room. Walking into the kitchen, I saw Shisui standing near the table and looking towards the departed girl. Did you quarrel? I asked, going up to the stove and putting the kettle on to heat up. Yes, he answered, sitting down at the table and clasping his fingers together. He began to look at one point with some strange look. Strongly? I asked again, putting the cups on the table and taking out a bowl of cookies and sweets. I don't want to see them fighting again. I hope that it is fleeting and that they will face off soon. I don't think so, he answered, still looking at one point. Sasuke, tell me, what happened to Naruto after everything that happened then? Shisui-san suddenly asked a question, looking at me with an expectant look. I sighed heavily, poured tea into mugs, and sat down opposite the Uchiha. Well, in general, I told everything that happened to her, without hiding anything. He even told me about the incident with the cliff, and why she started drinking and gambling. It was hard for me to remember and tell everything. Still, my family and the entire clan died then. But I dealt with it by closing the memories, walling them off so that they would not burden me, but would also warm me with their existence. Besides, Shisui-san needs to know everything. I just hope that he will understand it and accept all its shortcomings, as I did. That's what happened. Shisui-san, understand and accept her. She is already trying to become the same. No, not like that. With your resurrection, Naruto began to smile again as before. But after so many years, old habits will not disappear. They will dull, becoming less noticeable, but will not disappear. Naruto has changed, not only externally, but also internally. Character, behavior, worldview. People change, but their attitude towards others remains the same. She loves you so much that she would do anything for you. This is visible to the naked eye. And she tries, too, for your sake. So that you don't worry about her. Try to close your eyes to her addictions, casually stop her when you see that she has had enough, but don't say anything. And especially don't reprimand. She herself will gradually dull her habits and addictions. Listen to my words, otherwise it will be even worse than it is now, I said, not expecting this from myself. To be honest, you'll never hear something like that from me, and I'm not much of a philosopher. But what won't you do for the happiness of your friends? Looking at Shisui-san, I saw a thoughtful look and pursed lips. This alarmed me, but I still don't know what reaction to what was said above to be expected from him. The Uchihas, although they were famous for their calmness, but this was only outwardly and in public. At home, the masks kept falling off, revealing unrestrained people. The Uchihas are somewhat reminiscent of the Uzumaki clan, with their temper. Thus, we fence ourselves off from everyone so that they become part of our darkness and loneliness that the Uchiha carries within himself. And only some people are allowed to see the real us. I didn't realize how much pain Naru was in. I didn't know what she had to endure. I understood, and understand, what Naruto felt, but awareness and understanding did not make it any easier. But, I will try not to put pressure on her, silently, supporting her. I think it will be better this way. I don't want to lose her, especially because of a stupid quarrel and prejudice. Thank you, Sasuke-kun, he said and smiled faintly, got up from the table, put the cup in the sink and headed to the second floor. It's good that everything was resolved. The main thing now is that Naruto forgives him. I sat in the kitchen a little longer and went to bed myself. Still, in 4, or rather in 3 days, the first stage of the exam will take place. And you need to prepare well for it. Repeat what you may need and hone your skills. With these thoughts, I first headed to the shower to rinse off after a hard day, and then to my room, where I double-checked all the equipment, sharpening kunai and shuriken, read a couple of clan scrolls, and only then, I spread the bed and lay down on bed. As soon as my head touched the pillow, I immediately began to fall asleep. But at the edge of my consciousness, I caught a few thoughts. The first thought came to me, finally, very soon, I will be able to test my strength and my potential. And based on this exam, I will understand what I still need to improve, what I need to stop at, and what I need to learn new. And only thanks to this, I can help Naruto and Shisui-san kill Danzo, the man responsible for all the tragedies that happened 4 years ago. And the second thought, and a rather strange one, was, where is Kurama? He hasn't been seen all day today. Nothing else came to my mind and I finally plunged into darkness, going to the kingdom of Morpheus. The sun was already high in the sky, delighting people with its bright and warm rays. The weather turned out to be hot, which is why the villagers preferred to stay at home or look for shade, which did not work out successfully for everyone. Ice cream sellers got rich on this day, so many people wanted to buy cold sweets and refresh themselves. I woke up later than usual, but was unusually cheerful and well rested. For some time they didn't wake me up, for which I was immensely grateful. Stretching in bed and smiling slightly, I got out of bed and headed to the shower, taking my casual clothes with me. I spent a little over half an hour in the bathroom, enjoying the slightly cool streams of water, just what I needed in such hot weather. Because of this, even the house is stuffy. We need to put a seal that cools the room, otherwise at this rate, we will cook in such an atmosphere. When I cleaned myself up, got dressed and tied 2 low ponytails, I left the bathroom and went down to the kitchen. Sasuke and Shisui were already sitting there, quietly talking about something, while drinking tea. Kurama was sitting in his basket, which he apparently carried himself, holding it in his teeth. It was so family-friendly that I couldn't help but let out a giggle. Everyone present in the room immediately stopped their animated conversation and turned towards the voice. "Good morning," I greeted them, going into the kitchen and heating the kettle, which had long since cooled down. The fox didn't even raise his head, still continuing to sleep, curled up in a ball. He apparently felt that I had arrived, so he did not react to the extraneous sound. "It's more like day than morning," Sasuke said, looking at me with a grin. I did not comment on this statement in any way, since I was completely satisfied that I was finally able to sleep. Continuing to move around the kitchen, I began to take tea, sugar, and goodies out of the cabinets while the kettle was heating up. When everything was on the table, and orange tea was already brewing in a mug, I sat down on a chair and began to have a late light breakfast. Out of the corner of my eye, I noticed Sasuke quietly leaving the kitchen, taking Kurama with him. He muttered something indignantly and rewarded the Uchiha with several scratches on his hands for daring to interrupt his sleep. Silence reigned in the room, which no one dared to break. I don't know why Shisui was silent, but I was, because I was very offended, and just a little bit because of guilt. "Naru, sorry about yesterday. I guess, no, I know what you've been through. I haven't been around all this time, so I don't know how to behave. But I want to be a support for you, and not start quarrels. I'll wait until you finally get used to the fact that I'm alive. And although habits will not disappear, they will become dull over time. Until then, I'll make sure you don't do anything stupid. So what? Forgive me?" Looking at the clasped fingers and smiling slightly, the Uchiha asked. I listened to him in silence, thinking about what was said above. I was offended by him, but at the same time I understood that I was wrong. There was no need to put so much pressure on him, especially when he literally came to life not so long ago. Forgive me for this behavior too. It will be difficult for me to get used to the idea of you being around again. But I will try to get back to normal as quickly as possible. Although habits cannot completely disappear, I said, placing my hands on top of his. However, I'm still offended by you. So you'll have to try hard to beg for forgiveness, I continued, smiling. Shisui looked up at me, peering into my face, and then also smiled. Rest assured, I will manage it before the evening, he said, to which I laughed fervently. This trait of Shisui's character has always surprised me. He didn't look like a typical Uchiha. Either he has always been like this, or perhaps he was influenced by meeting me. But the fact is that he was different, not like all the Uchihas. And I really liked it. I didn't even notice how, in a fit of joy, my tail began to lash from side to side. Well, good luck to you, I said, getting up from the table and starting to clean the kitchen. And a few minutes later, when I finished cleaning, I headed towards the exit of the house. Sasuke and Kurama were not heard all this time, so I decided that they were either walking somewhere or training. Shisui followed me, apparently decided to take action. Well, I forgave him a long time ago, however, I want to see how he will ask for forgiveness. This has already happened when we had a big fight and, most importantly, for the first time. Then it even got to the point where I moved. I had no time for fun then, so I didn't have time to enjoy the quarrel. Besides, it lasted quite a long time and was serious, so I decided to sublimate a small quarrel in order to feel and enjoy it. It sounds creepy, but that's how it is. No, the quarrel yesterday was real, and I was really offended, but Shisui's words today sobered me up a little and brought me to my senses. so now I'm sublimating to have fun. At the moment I'm walking around Konoha, looking into different shops and looking for interesting things for the home, food and clothing, weapons, and all sorts of other little things. Shisui walked nearby all this time, and I took advantage of the opportunity and bought almost everything, while Shisui stored the bulky bags. He was not indignant, steadfastly accepting the purchases, but his face spoke for itself. Further after the shops, I went to the ANBU training ground, where I said "Oh" to everyone. "Oh, Naruto-chan, long time no see. How are you?" Yukari asked me, who ran up to me from an unknown direction. "And where was she anyway, you ask?" "I didn't see her among the guys. Really a long time ago." "Everything is fine with me. I decided to go around the store," I said, pointing to Shisui standing next to him with a mountain of bags. Yukari looked at him with interest, and then her eyes sparkled, and she smiled slyly. "Sometimes it seems to me that the fox is not me, but she. Mirai, come here," she shouted to her friend. "But something tells me that they are not connected by friendly relations." Then a tall guy approached, slightly taller than Shisui, with pleasant features and short red hair. "Did you call?" he asked in a pleasant voice. To be honest, I don't really know him, we only saw each other a couple of times at our get-togethers, and even at training. So we can say that we don't know each other at all. "Yes. You'll go shopping with us," Yukari said in such a voice that it's quite difficult to object. "Naru, maybe you can seal these purchases in a scroll? Otherwise I don't have enough hands to go shopping with you again," Shisui asked in a plaintive voice. I looked at him with a searching gaze, to which he only looked away. "Are you already giving up?" I asked, looking at him with a sly squint. "No," he exclaimed, to which I grinned. Well, this is expected, after all Uchihas have pride, even someone as atypical as Shisui. "Then don't whine," I said, and with Yukari and Mirai I headed towards the Konoha shopping area. "Let him suffer a little more, then I'll seal some of the purchases in a scroll. Of course, I feel sorry for him, but let him not relax." So we walked until the evening. Mirai, like Shisui, sealed the packages into bags several times, only to be loaded again later. They already regretted that they even went shopping with us. But Shisui, nevertheless, achieved my forgiveness, which he was incredibly happy about. Dinner was waiting for us at home, which Sasuke had prepared. He was still warm, apparently he had only recently had dinner, without waiting for us. So we didn't wait for the food to completely cool down, so after quickly washing our hands, we sat down at the table. We ate in peace and quiet. I don't know what Shisui was thinking about at that moment, but I was thinking about the exam that was supposed to take place in 2 days. I'll have to change my appearance so they don't recognize me. It will be difficult to do, and besides, I don't want to change anything about myself. Maybe then he can put a special seal on himself, thanks to which others will see a different appearance or impose an illusion. Although no, many can see through genjutsu and can easily dispel it. So all that remains is the print. The main thing is just to come up with an appearance to put into print. But I will remove the ears and tail myself for a while. I think that we can give Sakura and Sasuke access, thanks to which they will see the real me, and not what I create. And Shisui wouldn't hurt either. I shared my thoughts with Shirkuan. He thought about my idea and fully approved. Now the main thing is to apply the seal correctly so that no problems arise. Yes, and you need to think about the name. Oh, and we need to report this to the Hokage so that there is no awkward situation. That's what I'll do tomorrow. And now I think I need to go to bed, otherwise I won't get up tomorrow. Shisui also agreed with this. So, after washing the dishes, we headed to our room. While he was making the bed, I quickly went to the shower. She returned half an hour later, already dressed in sleeping clothes. Shisui also went to the bathroom to rinse off. I, without waiting for him, fell onto the bed and immediately fell asleep. Today has turned out to be an unusually difficult day. The remaining 2 days before the exam, I, Sasuke, and Sakura developed a plan for 2 stages. Why 2, you ask? Well, everything is very simple here. I would even say primitively. The fact is that I am only participating in the first 2 stages. At the 3rd stage, as well as in intermediate battles, if there are any, I will not take part. I have no use for this. Yes, and I will be the examiner at the 3rd stage. The main thing for me is that Sasuke and Sakura can take part in the exam. And it is impossible to find a 3rd team member in such a short time. And all the genins are already on teams, and there are no free ones. So the Hokage instructed me to take part in this, as the 3rd member of team number 7. In addition, I carefully stamped both hands so that my appearance would be different to strangers. On the day of the exam, all I have to do is release the chakra into the seals and the technique will start. I chose an ordinary, unremarkable appearance. Short, disheveled lilac-colored hair and blue eyes. The skin is slightly pale, but not like a toadstool. The face is slightly rounded, the body is slender, and the body is somewhere in the 2nd size, perhaps even a little smaller. And I look like I'm 13, not 16. I will remove the tail and ears, or rather hide them. But I had to tinker with the name. But a day later, I was registered as Hayumi Rintaro. I also managed to report this to the Hokage, and even showed my new appearance, which others will see. Hiryuzan was pleased with the result. So I spent the rest of the time with the team and developing a plan of action. Shisui was also stressed with this exam. He is now an observer for the 1st and 2nd stages. So if any unforeseen situations suddenly arise, you can rely on him. And now, the day has come for the 1st stage of the Chunin exam. Now we are standing at the entrance to the academy. Sasuke and Sakura are in their usual clothes, but I had to change my style. Now I'm wearing black shorts, a mesh t-shirt, over which is an orange vest with 3/4 sleeves. On his hands are black fingerless gloves, and on his feet are blue sandals, which are higher than standard ones. There were bandages on the right ankle, to which a pouch with kunai and shuriken was attached, and a katana was attached to the back. The protector was tied around the neck. The seals were placed on the wrists, but they were not visible except for me, Sasuke, Sakura and Shisui, since they had access to it to see the real me. But I warned Shirkuan not to come at me with hugs and kisses in public. During the 1st and 2nd stages, while I am in a new image, we know each other only as good friends, connected as a student-teacher, nothing more. Otherwise, if suddenly one of the Konokovites sees him with me in a new image, they will think that Shirkuan is cheating on me. And they will be able to think this way, because almost the entire village knows about our relationship. Do you remember our plan? I asked, standing near the entrance to the academy. To my question, my charges only nodded in agreement, to which I smiled slightly. Fine. Then let's go. Yes, Hayumi, they said, and followed me inside the building. When we went up to the 2nd floor, we noticed a crowd of genin who were crowded near Auditorium 303. And in front of them stood 2 chunin under a hyenge. I recognized them for the simple reason that they used hyenge on their own children. Apparently, they decided to play a trick on the newcomers by setting up a kind of test. I frowned and looked around me. The most notable were the trio of genin 1 year older than Sakura and Sasuke. 2 guys, one in a green leotard, a bowl haircut and thick eyebrows, the second had long hair and gray eyes, which identified him as a member of the Hugo clan, and the third was a girl in unusual clothes with 2 buns on her head. They tried to go into the office, but the eternal gatekeepers did not allow this. It just begs one question. Don't they see the illusion placed on the office number? Yes, and logically one could guess that we are on the 2nd floor, and the sign with the office number is on the 3rd floor. And in the application for participation it was said that you need to come to the 3rd floor in room 303, but not to the 2nd floor. Looking at my temporary comrades, I realized that Sasuke had long ago seen through the deception, and Sakura also seemed to understand what the catch was. Nodding to them, we quietly walked through this entire crowd and went up to the desired 3rd floor, where Kakashi-san was waiting for us. By the way, he is also aware of my new appearance and new name, so he simply wished me luck and let me into the office. Quite a lot of people had already gathered there, but we still found free seats. Having sat down on them, I began to look around and analyze potentially dangerous opponents that Sasuke and Sakura had better not encounter again. This category included the trio from Suna, especially the red-haired one with a pumpkin on his back. Looking at him, for some reason a shiver runs down my spine, and a strange, incomprehensible feeling appears that has never happened before. Kurama, who decided to be with me today, growled when I looked at that boy. "Ku, why did you suddenly start growling?" I turned to my tailed friend. He was silent for some time, but then he said something from which I immediately understood why I was haunted by a strange feeling, looking at Tsunebets with a pumpkin. That red-haired kid with the circles under his eyes is the Jinchuriki of the one-tailed Shikaku. This raccoon puts pressure on the boy's consciousness and does not allow him to sleep. He is very psychotic and quite cruel. So be careful with him, the fox said and fell silent. Now everything became clear to me. Well, at least now I know who I'm dealing with. I won't say anything to the guys, otherwise Sakura will screw up God knows what, and Sasuke will immediately decide to fight him in order to test his strength and skills against such a strong opponent. He is, of course, strong, and Sakura has changed for the better, but it's still better not to take another risk. Having calmed down a little, I continued to observe the genin of other countries. Among them, I noted the Sound Trio and the Konoha Trio, whom I had never seen before. Especially, the bespectacled one. He seems somehow suspicious to me, and his chakras are like those of an experienced jonin, which makes me even more alarmed. Apart from them, I didn't find anyone else interesting or dangerous, except that the grass team, or rather the red-haired girl, interested me greatly. Her chakra is very similar to mine. Yes, and again I had a strange feeling, but not the same as looking at Gaara. I'll have to watch her at the second stage, and it will be even better if I get to know her and can talk. For all my thoughts and observations of the participants, I missed the moment when all the new genin from Konoha arrived. I also missed the mess that happened between that strange guy with glasses and the village of Sound. It's true that I don't understand what he was doing next to the newbie genin. Either he came up to support his comrades, or to find out something, or he was looking for someone, but when he realized that the person he needed was not there, he decided to continue talking so as not to arouse any suspicion. And for some reason, it seems to me that the third version of events is appropriate here. And I'm used to trusting my intuition and feminine instincts, because they have never let me down. And so, I again thought that I had missed the moment when the examiners came. As I understood later, they stopped the starting fight and explained what needed to be done. Looking at who was taking part in the first stage, I realized that it would be very fun. The main thing is that Sakura doesn't make a mistake when the time comes for the last question. Why do I have to pretend to be a genin instead of taking the Chunin exam myself? No, at the third stage I will be an examiner, but that moment is still very far away, and it will probably be boring. Anyway, my job right now is to pretend I'm a genin. And this is quite difficult. Although we have drawn up an action plan, I will not help them pass the exam. So I'll just watch the examiners and the participants to see who will cheat in what way. And then write it all down on a piece of paper for Ibiki-san. Well, it's time to start. It was an uneventful day. Everything is as usual. Sasuke and I came to the next village to settle there for a few days and weeks, stock up on provisions, rest and train a little. I was in the worst mood then, which is why the Uchiha avoided me, as if he was afraid of something. To be honest, we only left the village relatively recently, after those tragic events. We've been traveling for just about, 6 months? No, more like a little more than 6 months. Perhaps even about a year. But still not enough. Although, you never know? For me this is not enough, but for Sasuke this is quite a long time. And all because I was depressed. No, I have had it for a long time, but from time to time it appears, for no reason. I was so deeply immersed in myself that I didn't notice anything around me. All she had time to do was train Sasuke, give him tasks, and show him what to do. I didn't smile like I used to when the people closest to me were alive. She was as pale as snow, if not whiter. But where is there more? I don't remember what kind of town it was, or maybe even a village. But what I remember clearly is that then I found some kind of eatery. Seeing the name and smelling the smell of alcohol, I decided to use the transformation technique, or rather change my age to adulthood. Although I looked older than my age, I was still not an adult, so they wouldn't let me into such an institution. And they don't care that I'm kind of a shinobi, and that I'm considered an adult. They have their own rules and laws to follow. Taking on my adult appearance, I opened the doors of the establishment and walked inside. Looking around, I realized that there weren't very many people here. More precisely, there are practically none. But I didn't really care, so I silently went to the farthest table and began to wait for the waiter. He didn't keep himself waiting. A minute later, a short girl with one high chestnut-colored ponytail and brown eyes, dressed in the uniform of a waiter of this establishment, appeared in front of my table. "What will you order?" the girl asked me. For a minute I thought about what I could order. I wanted to relax, forget myself, throw all the bad thoughts out of my head so that my pain would subside. So I decided to order a few bottles of sake and some food. "I'll have 3 bottles of sake and 5 plates of dango." "That's all for now," I said, looking around the room boredly. Then my gaze fell on a woman of about 30 with blonde hair that was tied in 2 low ponytails. She sat not far from me and drank from a bowl, apparently sake, judging by her fairly reddened cheeks. She reminds me of someone with her appearance. But I couldn't remember who. And a couple of minutes later, they brought me my order. I poured sake into the bowl and drank it right away. My throat burned with bitterness, making me wince violently. Taking a skewer of dango, I ate 1 ball, eating away at the unpleasant bitterness. While I was drinking the first glass, I felt that woman looking at me. Ignoring this, I poured it again and then drank it. Wincing again, she ate dango again. This time the woman moved from her seat to me. I noticed her only when she turned to me. "Is this your first time drinking sake?" she asked, looking at me carefully. Looking up from contemplating the table, I raised my head and looked at my interlocutor. "Yes," I answered without trying to hide it. "Let me ask. Why did you decide to try alcohol if you had never drank before?" I thought about the answer, carefully peering into the face of the woman sitting opposite me. It's spinning in my head, but I still can't remember who she might remind me of. This is a very long and unpleasant story. "I just want to wash down my pain," I answered after a moment of silence, pouring myself another drink. "Well, I'm in no hurry. If you don't mind, we can have a drink together. At the same time, you can share your experiences," the blonde said, also pouring herself some sake. "Then let's introduce ourselves?" "It's somehow inconvenient to talk without knowing the interlocutor," I agreed, pouring hot alcohol into myself. This time I didn't wince too much. Apparently, I'm starting to get used to it. "Tsunade Senju," she answered, slightly lifting the corners of her lips. But now I remember who she reminded me of. It turns out that this is the legendary Sennin and the best doctor in the world. "It's very nice to meet you, Tsunade-san. My name is Naruto Uzumaki," I introduced myself, also smiling at the corners of my lips. "Naruto? Daughter of Minuto and Kushina?" Senju asked, peering more closely at me. "About. Did you know my parents?" I was sincerely surprised. I honestly didn't expect this. "But I can ask you more about them." "Certainly. I was your mother's teacher, Kushina. Shouldn't you be in Konoha right now? And it seems like you should be much smaller?" she asked, trying to understand whether I was lying or not. "Well, I left Konoha on a trip with Sasuke Uchiha. At the same time, I'll train him and I'll become stronger myself." "And why I look older is Hyenge," I answered, not even understanding why I was telling her everything. either because she knew my parents or for some other reason. I can't say for sure. Maybe you can take off the high edge? And why are you drinking sake at such a young age? If I remove the equipment, nothing much will change. I look about 12 years old, and not my age. I still decided to take off the equipment. After some time, Tsunade saw me at the age of 12, with long red hair tied in 2 low ponytails, like a senju's. With different colored eyes, with 6 stripes on the cheeks, 3 on each. Dressed in a black and red combat kimono. All my weapons were sealed on my hands in a spatial pocket so as not to get in the way. I also had fox ears and a tail that darted from side to side. It was clear from the woman's face that she was very surprised. That's putting it mildly. By the time she was recovering, I had already finished 1 bottle and 1 bowl of dango before starting on the second. How? Said Senin, looking at me with blank eyes. I'm telling you it's a long story. But I think I can tell it to you. You'll just have to start all over again. More precisely, how I got ears and a tail, and also why I look older than my age. After that I drank 1 glass and began to tell. She told me about meeting Kurama, how after the first meeting I woke up at home and looked in the mirror. How my training began, enrolling in ANBU, meeting my best friend and sworn brother, meeting my team, namely Itachi, Shisui, and Kakashi. She told me about who became who for me. About the fact that Shisui and I met and how he proposed to me, and about how I lost first my brother, then my loved one, and then my best friend, along with the entire Uchiha clan, who sheltered me and who became family to me. About the fact that Sasuke and I left Konoha to travel and that I am training him. About my depression and about the fact that I have changed a lot after all the tragedies that happened to me. That I am no longer that cheerful and smiling girl. While I was telling the story, I didn't notice how I drank the remaining 2 bottles and ate all the dango. Between pauses in the narration, I ordered more and more for 2. Tears of pain and despair flowed from my eyes. With every word spoken, I felt how I felt better. How the load gradually weakens. Tsunade was already sitting next to me and hugging me by the shoulders. In her eyes, you can see the understanding of what I am experiencing. But I didn't see any self-pity there, only understanding and a kind of approval that I decided to get drunk. That's how it was. This is actually my story, I finished, my tongue already slurred. And quite strongly. Everything was swimming before my eyes, my cheeks were burning, and I felt some kind of heaviness in my body. Our stories are similar. I also lost a loved one and a brother, and also a best friend, she said, downing a glass of sake. She was in no better condition than me, so I understood everything the woman said. We talked for a long time on all possible topics. They sang different songs, the whole place laughed. Fortunately there were practically no people, and if there were, they were in no better condition than us. The waiter at first wanted to kick me out because I was not an adult, but then he realized that it was useless. Firstly, I'm a kunoichi, and secondly, I was already drunk. So they turned a blind eye to it. I don't know how long we sat there. We no longer noticed anything around us, continuing to drink and drink. We woke up only when 2 voices called out to us. One was female, the other was boyish. But the intonation and address were the same. Naruto Heim. Tsunade Heim. After these words, a shadow hung over me and my interlocutor. Raising my head, I looked with a dull gaze at those who disturbed us. With difficulty, but I was still able to identify my student and the thorn in one place. Namely Uchiha Sasuke. But I don't know the second figure. But you can tell by her physique and voice that this is a girl. And apparently, she is with Tsunade-san. Perhaps even her student. There was not a single coherent thought in my head, and I had neither the strength nor the desire to think about who she was and who she was. Sasuke, you, how did you enter this, establishment? Children aren't allowed here, she asked in a slurred voice, reclining on the table with her new friend. He said he came to pick you up. And generally speaking, I searched the whole village for you. he exclaimed indignantly, looking at me displeased. Tsunade as much as possible. You can't be left for a minute. The girl was indignant, looking at the woman. Looks like she has her own supervisor too. This, of course, is the first time I drank alcohol at all, let alone got drunk, but Sasuke was always watching over me so that I wouldn't do anything because of the bad events and depression after what happened. This was the last thought. Out of the corner of my eye, I noticed that Tsunade-san also stopped listening and passed out. I woke up in the hotel room where we stayed after we arrived in the village. I vaguely remember what happened yesterday. I remember that I met Sennin from the legendary Trinity and also the best physician. I remember how while drinking sake we shared our story, but I don't remember what happened next. The head is bursting at the seams, and from sudden movements and too loud sounds, it begins to spin and gives off an impulse. My throat was dry and it felt like I had been in the desert for a month without water, and the taste was strange and unpleasant. I have never felt so bad in my life. The death of loved ones does not count. There is mental pain, but here it is not so much physical, but, well, I don't know, moral or something. I was afraid to move too much so as not to cause another headache. I was terribly thirsty, and there was no water nearby, which irritated me incredibly. After lying there for a while, I decided to turn to Kurama for help. "Hey Ku, can you hear me?" I said plaintively in my mind. In response, I heard silence. This made me a little worried. Either he was sleeping, or he didn't want to answer my call, or something else, but I decided to call again. What if he answers this time? "Kurama, answer me. Need your help." "Well, what do you want?" I heard a growling voice from the depths of my subconscious. My head is pounding and my throat is dry. "Help, I voiced my problem, asking for help. There was a minute of silence, during which I thought of anything for myself, afraid of being rejected. "You need to drink less, and nothing will hurt," said the fox, but I still felt like I was getting a little easier. "Then handle it yourself. I am not a doctor to treat such diseases." "That's it, I'm off to bed," he said, and before he finally fell asleep, I managed to say, "Thank you. I really felt better. Now I can at least get up." As soon as I got out of bed, the door to the room opened and a black-haired boy walked into the room. Looking closer, I realized it was Sasuke. "Are you awake? How are you feeling?" the Uchiha asked, coming up to me and holding out a jug of life-giving water and a glass. Ignoring the glass and the question, I grabbed the jug and began to greedily drink the saving water. Although Kurama treated me, which significantly subsided the headache, it did not help with the dryness. So I was very glad that Sasuke came with such a necessary resource for me. In less than a minute, I drank all the water in the jug, after which I felt even better. Having placed the object on the nightstand, I plopped down on the bed and began to smile blissfully, closing my eyes. Tsunade-sama and Shizun-san are in the same hotel, on the floor above. "I think you'll want to visit them," the Uchiha said. After his words, I opened my eyes and looked at him carefully. He stood with a calm face. More precisely, he tried to do it. Well, equanimity. Which, to be honest, didn't work out well for him. Which made Sasuke too cute. Unable to resist, I stood up and approached the boy. Peering into his face, she began to pull his cheeks in different directions. This probably went on for quite a long time. He tried to break free, defend his cheeks, said something inaudibly, but I didn't back down, continuing to torture his cheeks. "You're so cute," I said after I finished pulling my cheeks. "Come on, can you show me where Tsunade-san's room is?" Sasuke nodded and led me to the floor above. After that, we asked Shizun, who was in the woman's room, and Sasuke to leave. As soon as the door closed behind them and I set up a barrier, we began to talk and remember everything that happened after our story about the past. After an hour of reminiscing, we began to talk about a variety of topics. During this conversation, we agreed to travel together for a while. At the same time, Tsunade-san promised to teach me how to gamble. She said that this also helps to distract from bad memories and forget for a while. I was glad that I found a person who understood me, who experienced almost everything the same as me. So we became best friends, even though we had a big age difference. It didn't bother us at all. From that moment on, we traveled together. Between villages and cities, we trained our students, and I also trained myself, studying and creating new things, improving the old. But in the villages and cities, there was complete bedlam. Me and Tsunade were constantly disappearing into different eateries, getting drunk or just drinking small amounts. Senju also showed how to gamble, showed places where you can play and with whom you can. This is where I showed myself. It turns out that I play very well. In all my time I have never lost. I constantly won, even if I had no chance of winning. It was as if I was calculating all the moves in advance. I have not lost a single argument, constantly winning. Thanks to this, I made a fortune. But Tsunade was not at all lucky. I even somehow learned that her nickname was the legendary loser, from the fact that she constantly lost, not only in games, but also in arguments. She had enormous debts. She constantly ran from those to whom she owed a large sum. But I helped cover all her debts. I didn't feel sorry because I could win more. Once I heard that they called me lucky, and even game, although most often they spoke of me as Lucky Fox. Honestly, by the time I met Tsunade, I was already a senin. But in that establishment, I was not dressed as usual. With the combat kimono I wore black breeches, and over the short combat kimono I wore a black and red haori with a red fire pattern on the hem and the hieroglyph senin on the back. Well, the hair was like Tsunade's. Why am I thinking about this, you ask? Well, it's simple. When we talked, we decided to pack all our things and meet at the entrance to the village in 2 hours. When Sasuke and I approached, I was dressed in the clothes I always wear. Shizun was very surprised at our similarity in clothes and hairstyle, after she found out that my life was somewhat similar to the life of a teacher, and add an addiction to drinking and gambling. Koto was almost fainted from shock. Tsunade herself suspected my involvement in the senin, but was still surprised by this fact. Well, in general, our journey together was fun. Sasuke and Shizun were constantly dragging us out of somewhere, scolding us, cursing, wailing, and walking around. But we didn't care. We were constantly running away from the guards, who stood over our souls and controlled our every step, which incredibly infuriated both me and Senju. So 3 months of travel passed, after which they parted ways and went their own way. We continued to train, and I also had fun. But before we parted ways, we agreed to meet again someday and periodically keep in touch with each other. We became best friends, and something tells me that she will help me and Sasuke with our goal. Our training continues. The path we have chosen and are following continues. We will become stronger, no matter what it takes, to carry out the sentence. We still have time. In the meantime, you need to train, gain strength, and enjoy life. Looking around, I noticed everything that interested me. Who cheats how, who spies on them, what abilities they use when cheating. I also watched the examiners, noticing all the details. But they were not as interesting to watch as Genin taking the exam. For example, that red-haired guy Gaara uses his sand. He turned it into an eye and sent it around the audience, looking for the right person. A girl with buns on her head has attached chakra threads to a mirror on the ceiling and is quietly moving her fingers, adjusting it so that she can easily write off. The thick-browed boy uses these mirrors for himself. Hugo, like Sasuke, used their eyes. Sakura writes herself, using her brain. A boy with a dog on his head cheats, thanks to his pet. But the trio from the new generation of Ino Shikacho joined forces. Ino moved in front of the person sitting in front and began to memorize the answers. Then Shikamaru, using the clan's techniques, connected himself, the blonde and the fat man from the Akamichi clan, and began to repeat Ino's movements. Kankuro from Suna used his dolls. I didn't understand exactly what he did when he entered, but after he returned, he conveyed the answer to his teammate. The Sound 3 used their powers to manipulate sound. I don't know what that strange guy from Konoha was doing. Whether he wrote on his own, or used something, remains unknown to me. But little Hugo clearly wrote herself, because she did not use her eyes. The red-haired girl who interested me also, apparently, wrote herself. This suggests that she has good theoretical knowledge. I wrote down all my observations on the back of the piece of paper. Although I observed the examiners, I did not write down anything about them. They did not carry any information value. But I also solved all the test tasks, out of boredom. For all these observations and notes, I didn't notice how the allotted time for the test had passed, and it was my turn to voice the last question. Looking around, I noticed that almost half was missing. Apparently, those most unsuited to obtaining information have already been eliminated. So, it's time to ask the 10th question. But before it is announced, there is one more rule, Ibiki said, looking at the remaining genin with a heavy gaze. What? Another rule? How can? There were indignant questions. I just grinned at this, resting my head on my fist. Perhaps, if it weren't for that meeting with Ku at a very early age, I would be the same now, taking this exam the same way and being on Sasuke's team. But fate turned out differently, and now I look at them as little children, although I myself, in fact, am a child of 13 years old. Although it is no longer visible, and no one knows how old I really am, except for my trusted representatives. Exactly. Before you ask the last question, you must decide whether you will stay or not. If you remain and do not answer the 10th question, all your points will be cancelled from the entire team and you will be eliminated from the exam. Also, if you do not answer the question, you lose the opportunity to become a chunin. In other words, you will no longer be able to take this exam. If you choose not to answer, your points will also be cancelled from the entire team and you will leave the exam. But in this case, you can try next year, Marino said. He began to put pressure on all the genin with his aura. But it's not fair. Someone exclaimed from the back desks. Ibiki grinned at this statement, repeating my grin as he replied. What a pity. But I am the rule of this stage. After these words he increased the pressure, awaiting further action. After some time, hands began to go up and the numbers of the participants were heard from the examiners. After half an hour, 78 people remained, that is, 26 teams. Quite a lot went through this stage, and this is considering the fact that the examiners were Marino Ibiki, who is a master of torture and interrogation. Looking at my charges, I realized that Sasuke and Sakura were not going to give up. Smiling slightly at my thoughts, I continued to watch everyone. Is this the final decision? He asked, increasing his pressure. But no one else raised their hand. Fine. Everyone who remained passed the first stage. What? What about the 10th question? Sakura asked, jumping up from her seat. She can be understood, yet you are preparing yourself for a difficult question, which determines whether you will become a chunin or not, and then they tell you that they passed the exam without asking the last question. We can say that your choice is the 10th question. You had to decide to stay or leave the audience. In other words, when you become a chunin, you are responsible for your team. Often on missions the question arises of whether to continue the mission by sacrificing the team or retreat, thereby failing the mission. This also applies to torture. You must be clearly aware of your goals and make the right decision, sometimes even ignoring your comrades, Ibiki began to explain, but then the glass broke and a brown something flew into the room, which soon became a girl with a poster. My left eye began to twitch from this circus. Oh, I shouldn't have gotten involved in all this. Very in vain. What? Only 78 people passed, in other words, 26 teams? You're getting old, Ibiki, she said nothing. Well, Anko, just wait a minute. As soon as this whole rigmarole with the exam is over, you'll have a blast with me. Do you even grasp the situation? Marino asked, making the girl blush. And in general, this time there are quite a lot of interesting specimens. So then. I am your second examiner Mitarashi Anko. The second stage will take place at training ground number 44, also called the Forest of Death. I will make sure that at least half of those present here fail my exam. Now follow me, she said and jumped out of the window she had broken. The genins began to gradually rise from their seats and leave the audience. I was a little late, deciding to write my nickname on my form. More precisely, the backside of the sheet, where all the information about interesting specimens is recorded, as Abiki put it. As soon as everything was done, I also left the audience. Having examined the tops of the heads and found the ones I needed, I headed towards them. We did well. Well done, I said, smiling slightly. Thank you, Hayumi, Sakura said, and Sasuke smiled gratefully. We did not wait for the others, but followed to the desired training ground. Luckily, I know the way. After some time, the examiner, observers and other exam participants arrived. Anko began to talk about the essence of the upcoming stage, talked about the rules, and also told us to sign the refusal sheets that they would not have claims against Konoha and the examiners if they died during the second stage. After which she explained what needed to be done. When we received our sky scroll and stood near our gate, we began to wait for the beginning. To be honest, I don't know how they will get through this stage. On the one hand, this is a good opportunity to test your strength, but on the other, the Forest of Death is a very dangerous place, teeming with all sorts of creatures. Insects and animals are colossal in size. What is one centipede worth? She can devour a person and not notice it, not to mention the fact that there are poisonous snakes, plants, and a lot of traps here. Most, of course, were removed, disabled, but there were those that remained that were well hidden and camouflaged. Therefore, there is something to be afraid of. And they will have to do everything themselves, since I will not interfere. Otherwise, it will be somehow dishonest that the Jounin helped the genin pass the exam. Hayumi, can we come up with a password just in case? You never know, we'll split up, and one of the enemies will take our form, Sasuke said when we stopped for a break. Not bad idea. And what kind of password did you come up with? I asked the guy, looking sideways with interest. Question for the password, who is Kitsune? You know the answer, said the Uchiha. I silently took a thin stick and wrote my first and last name on the ground, showing it to Sasuke and Sakura. They nodded in agreement, and I quickly erased the inscription so that it was impossible to read. After resting for some more time, we continued on our way. But we didn't even have time to walk a few kilometers when a team of genin from Sound blocked us. What scroll do you have? I asked, looking carefully at the Sound guys. Earth, they answered. I just nodded my head, signaling Sasuke and Sakura to attack. She herself moved a little to the side, watching the fight. It was a little hard for the guys to fight them. But, nevertheless, an hour later, the opponents were defeated and the scroll was taken away. Fine. The training was not in vain. But it's still too long and there are some errors. Therefore, after the end of the exam, a new complicated training program will be introduced. You've used up too much chakra in an hour, which is very reckless. If everything is clear with Sakura, since she recently began to train fully, then I didn't expect this from you, Sasuke, she said, looking reproachfully at the Uchiha. He lowered his head without looking up at me. Please forgive me, teacher, he said, to which I just sighed. Okay. Grab my shoulders, I'll take you to the tower, I said, waiting for them to do the right thing. Then she made several seals, and we all disappeared together in a flash of white lightning. At that very second, we found ourselves near the tower. Walking into the room, the guys saw a large poster with a riddle. I didn't say anything, leaving them to understand the full meaning themselves. This took a little over 10 minutes, after which they simultaneously unrolled the scrolls and threw them on the floor. Immediately a pop was heard, as if moving. As soon as the smoke cleared, we were confronted by a 30-year-old man with hair pulled back into a high ponytail that resembled a pineapple, a scar on the bridge of his nose, and wearing a standard Chunin uniform. Irika-sensei? Sakura asked, apparently recognizing her teacher from the academy in this man. I didn't listen to further explanations. I was wondering what Shisui was doing now. No, of course, I know that he is an observer in the Forest of Death, but it's still interesting. I won't see him for another 5 days. I'm already bored, but when I think that I'll have to wait for a long time, it immediately makes me sad. Meanwhile, Iruka continued to explain something, giving instructions. To be honest, I didn't really delve into the conversation, I only listened out of the corner of my ear, hoping not to miss important information. As it turned out, it was not in vain. After a few minutes, he said that we would be given rooms in which we would wait for the end of the second stage. After saying goodbye to him, we went to the tower residential complex. Having found the rooms, we settled on the beds there. I didn't really want to do anything. I was so tired this day that I had never been tired on the longest and most difficult mission. I thought that the exam would seem like a very interesting entertainment and relaxation, but as it turned out, it became a real test for me. I don't even know how I managed not to break down and reveal myself. It became the most interesting thing. I ask you not to disturb me. If you want to look around, go, but don't go outside the tower, this is prohibited by the rules. There is a training room on the top floor, you can go and practice and hone your existing skills. And yes, I almost forgot. Don't get into a fight with anyone. Especially from other villages. And try not to cross paths with the red-haired boy who has a pumpkin-shaped vessel behind his back, I said, lying down on the bed. What will you do? Sasuke asked, watching me turn to the wall. Sleep and rest. Am I on vacation or not? I said, waving my hand to them from side to side, as if indicating that they could be free. After that, I heard footsteps and the door closing. Without thinking twice, I made myself more comfortable and closed my eyes, immediately falling asleep. 5 days have passed. 5 whole days of boredom and idleness. All I did was lie on my bed, sleep, and talk to Kurama. Sasuke and Sakura spent their free time exploring the tower and training in a special room. But I was dead bored. I can't leave the tower, I can't meet Shisui, and I don't even have anyone to spar with. The only thing that smoothed out these days was a little training that Sasuke begged for, and the most important and strange thing was that Sakura joined him. I had no choice but to agree. I wasn't busy anyway. This happened on the 3rd day after we arrived at the end point of the exam. For the remaining 2 days, I trained them and gave them advice on how best to act in a given situation. Well, she showed me a couple of new techniques. At the same time, I warmed up myself. And now, finally, the painful wait is over. All those who passed the second stage were gathered in a large hall. Many were badly battered, some escaped with only dirt, some with minor wounds and exhaustion, while others were completely unharmed. During this time, Sasuke and Sakura managed to recover and heal their wounds, which they received during the battle with the Sound Team, and the Sand Team was also unharmed. As far as I know, they came first in a very short time, but we came second, an hour later. But I digress. We stood in front of the Jonin and the Hokage, waiting for the time for the 3rd stage to be announced. There is no teamwork, and the qualities of each person are assessed there. How someone will show themselves. They fight one-on-one, with almost no restrictions. Why almost? In such a battle, the death of a participant is possible, but not desirable. The examiner can stop the fight at any time if he deems it necessary. This happens if the death of one of the participants is possible. Sometimes they may not have time to react in time. But this rarely happened. I got distracted again. In front of the group of genin stood several jounin, more precisely team commanders, examiners, and observers of the second stage, and the Hokage himself. The silence dragged on a little, I don't even know why. And so, when everyone was already on edge, which could be felt in the air, Sarutobi-sama spoke. He explained why this exam was needed and what its purpose was. He spoke a lot and monotonously. He would have continued talking more, if not for the sandstone, which interested me, because of its similarity to me. This does not mean that I am as bloodthirsty as he is. Our similarity is that he is also a Jinchuriki, but he is at odds with his bijou. Before we continue, I need to know. Are there those who wish to leave the exam? If there is, raise your hand and you will be disqualified. Naturally, your comrades will continue to take the exam. The third stage does not involve teamwork, so you don't have to worry. The Hokage's question brought me out of my thoughts. And I realized that this was my chance to get out of it without attracting unnecessary attention to myself. Hokage-sama, I wish to leave the exam, I said, raising my hand. I also want to leave. I used up too much chakra, another voice was heard from the other end. I turned my head there and saw a guy who, before the first stage, was saying something to the Konoha Genin and was looking for someone. I chuckled at this statement. I didn't believe that he had little chakra left. He is most likely pursuing some goal of his own, but apparently someone spoiled his plans. And I'm even starting to guess who it is. Fine. Yakushi Kabuto and Hayumi Rintaro can leave the tower building. I just nodded and walked out the door. That guy followed me. After waiting until he disappeared from my sight, I removed the seal, returning my true appearance. The clothing also took on the appearance of a combat kimono, over which was worn a haori with the inscription Sannin on the back. Her hair became long, red and braided into two low ponytails. In addition to the kimono, they were wearing knee-length combat shorts, and on their feet were high sandals with small comfortable heels. I opened the scroll from where I took out the jonin vest. She took off her haori, put on a green vest, and put on her haori again. I also let my tail and ears out. After listening to what was happening in the hall, I realized that it was time for me to leave. Let me explain, Hokage-sama, I said, appearing in front of the surprised genin. Let me explain, Hokage-sama, I said, appearing in front of the surprised genin. Please, said the old man, stepping aside and making it clear that we could begin. I looked around the room and the assembled genin, not lingering on anyone in particular for longer than I should have. Even those who interested me. First of all, I'll introduce myself. My name is Uzumaki Naruto, and I am the third examiner for the Chunin exam. The third stage will take place in a month at the stadium. But, before that, there will be a qualifying round. Too many of you have passed through, and we do not have time to conduct all the battles in the third stage, since all the high-ranking officials will gather. The qualifier will weed out half of you. This round does not depend on teamwork, just like the last stage. So from now on, it's every man for himself. After a short pause, I looked around everyone again. Many looked at each other, whispered, but no one spoke out loud. Now I will announce the rules of the qualifiers. Look at the right corner of the arena. There is a scoreboard hanging under the ceiling. It will determine the fights and who will fight with whom. The choice is random, so be prepared for the fact that you will have to fight with your friend, relative, or teammate. Also, if I deem it necessary, I will stop the fight. If the enemy surrenders or cannot fight, the fight is over. Finishing off the enemy is strictly prohibited. We don't need deaths. If this happens, you will be disqualified. Now, please pay attention to the scoreboard, I said and looked at the screen along with the others. The letters flashed on it, making their choice. After a minute of waiting, the first fight was decided. I asked Uchiha Sasuke and Inuzuka Kiba to remain in the arena. The rest of you, go up to the second floor for observation, I said and waited until everyone had gone up, except those named. After some time of waiting, Kiba and Sasuke remained in the arena, standing opposite each other. I gave the go-ahead to start, and I jumped back to a safe distance, but so that I had time to intervene if something happened. Looking at this brown-haired guy with a dog on his head, I feel sincerely sorry for his teacher. If Sakura can somehow be re-educated, especially after being called back, then this Kiba can only wisen up when he grows up, and I'm not sure that this will happen. And the whole point is that he began to rant about how Sasuke supposedly could not defeat him. That he was the strongest in his stream, and the Uchiha was not in the village at all. I, of course, taught him to control his emotions, and the brunette himself is quite good at ignoring the dog walker, but when it came to me as a teacher, Sasuke could not restrain himself. He didn't rant or say anything, he simply made several seals and breathed out a stream of fire, which began to turn into a fireball. The Inuzuka somehow managed to dodge, and that was thanks to his dog. However, Sasuke did not waste his time and waste chakra. He quickly approached with his dojutsu activated and, catching his opponent's gaze, sent him into genjutsu. The outcome of the battle was initially predetermined, since Sasuke's level of training was significantly different from all of his former classmates. After announcing the winner and waiting for the next names to appear, the qualifiers continued. I was not interested in watching the fighters, only a few interested me. Namely brother and sister Sabaku no. I don't know what motivates them and what goal they are pursuing, but you need to keep them in sight, especially the younger ones. He hasn't fought yet, but I have a very bad feeling about him. While I was indulging in my thoughts, another duel began. What surprised me a lot was that there were two Hyugas fighting. One from the main branch is Hinata, the other from the side branch is Neji. We all watched the fight with caution in order to have time to intervene if the heiress was in danger. And I felt like something was going to happen. Neji almost killed his cousin. Enough, I said in a cold voice, looking into the guy's violet eyes. My gaze almost flashed lightning with rage. This clown didn't even think about stopping, even despite the Jounins present nearby. Out of the way, he said without emotion, looking with an unblinking gaze at his cousin, who could barely stand on her feet. Not paying any attention to us, he continued the attack, but I managed to react in time, binding him with chakra chains. I looked at him with a furious gaze, keeping an eye on Hinata from the corner of my gaze. I also noticed that Kakashi, Kurenai, Guy, and Asuma appeared nearby. Apparently they wanted to stop him if I didn't succeed. I said enough. One more move and you will be disqualified from the exam, I said, holding him with chains. Hinata can no longer continue the fight. Get out of the way, loser, said the suicide bomber. My eyes darkened and my hair began to rise up, dividing into several parts, saturated with the emitted chakra. The tail stood up and the ears stood up. Out of the corner of my ear I heard someone say, "Oh, someone's blood is about to be shed." Judging by the voice, it was someone who was a girl, but unfamiliar to me. Someone find Shisui-san and bring him here. Fast. Sasuke shouted, looking at me with a bit of fear. I felt this clearly. He is not afraid of me, but of my current state. But I'm not going to stop until I beat thee out of this clown. Who are you calling a loser, carrion? I growled, squeezing the chains on Hugo, thereby squeezing him. I'll make a cutlet out of you now, so that in future you will watch your language and actions, I continued, squeezing the chains tighter. Calm down, Naru, Shisui's voice said, and he put his hand on his clenched fist, slowly lowering it down. The tail began to return to normal, as did the hair, which was again tied in two low ponytails. The eyes brightened and filled with warmth. I turned towards the voice and smiled tenderly. Shirkuan, I said, loosening the chains, but not removing them. I'm glad to see you too, Naru. Let's talk a little later, you need to finish the qualifiers, he said, smiling at me with his smile. With his appearance, I seemed to have forgotten about everything in the world, but Shisui reminded me where I was and what happened a minute ago. I turned to Neji, who was breathing heavily. My eyes darkened again, filled with rage, but not the same as they were a minute ago. Now listen to me carefully. I won't let you do whatever you want. Hinata is not just an heiress, she is your sister who has done nothing wrong. Since I am not a genin, I cannot take part in the exam. However, I will visit your clan and have a thorough talk with the head and elders, and also beat the out of you. And if you call me a loser and be rude again, you will have to deal not only with me, but also with my fiancé. Do you understand? Adding coldness and growling notes to my voice, I asked. He looked at me with displeasure and hatred, but nodded. I released him from the chains, turned around and walked up to Hinata, who recently could not resist, fell and lost consciousness. What did he call you? Shisui asked me, tensed. It's okay, Shirkuan. I think this incident is temporarily hushed up. We need to examine Hinata, but quickly. With these words I walked up to the lying girl and, sitting down next to her, began examining her with chakra. I slightly healed the most serious wounds. I'm not capable of more, because my chakra is too heavy. Then I noticed Sakura's gaze directed at my hands. She studied what I did, analyzed, and came to her own conclusions, which could not but please me. Sakura, you seem to be pretty good at healing? Could you come down and help me? I am not ironing and my chakra is very heavy and poisonous. I have to clean it before treatment, so I can't maintain it for a long time. I have healed serious injuries, but I need a medical examination to check everything again, otherwise I could have missed something, I said, continuing to support the healing chakra. Sakura didn't answer, but immediately jumped over the railing and came over to me. Sitting down opposite her and transforming her chakra into healing, she began to move her hand over the unconscious Hinata. I started learning Irianzutsu not long ago, so I can't do much. However, Naruto-sensei, you have healed all the serious wounds, only minor injuries remain. But she needs to undergo a full medical examination. Still, I'm not experienced in this matter, she said when she finished checking. I smiled slightly at her modesty. Still, the call greatly influenced her, and for the better. I think she will continue to study with the summon for some time, so I will take care of her, and then I will ask Tsunade to train her and consolidate her successes. She will turn out to be an outstanding medic, perhaps even surpassing Tsunade, in time. You're still doing great, Sakura, I said, and then turned to the standing jounin. Call the doctors, let them take Hinata, and take her to the first aid station. We didn't have to wait long. Literally a few minutes later, several doctors with a stretcher entered the room. Approaching Hugo, and putting her in a carrier, they quickly left. I hope nothing happens to Hinata during this time. Now all my attention turned to those present. Having informed everyone about Hugo Neji's victory, I asked the extra people to leave the arena. As soon as everyone reached the balcony, the board flashed again and stopped, showing the following names. Haruno Sakura and Ino Yamanako, please come down, I said. The girls quickly jumped off the balcony, landing in the arena and standing opposite each other. Having given the signal to start the battle, I jumped back to a safe distance. This is where we all fell out of reality. Instead of starting a battle, they started bickering, ranting, and insulting. And they started fighting because of Sasuke. Looking carefully at Sakura, I realized that she was only pretending, and it gave her pleasure to mock her rival. Nodding with satisfaction, I stopped following the events, again plunging into my thoughts and only automatically announcing the winners and naming the next two. I woke up when I felt danger. Reacting quickly, I appeared between the copy of Gai-san and the younger dog, but, preventing the sand from capturing Lee. Here Guy also reacted to the danger, for the student. Dog no Gara, quickly calmed down his psychotic raccoon, otherwise I will do it, I said in a hard voice, looking into the crazy turquoise eyes. Gara wasn't going to listen, so I quickly approached him and, having made a short series of seals, drew an intricate sign in the air, applied chakra, and touched the Jinchuriki's stomach, saying, Fuinjutsu, symbol seal of suppression. 3rd level. Change. I said, after which a faint glow appeared. When it disappeared, the chakra in the sand decreased greatly, and the rage stopped splashing in his eyes. Then his older brother and sister appeared and, as I understood, the sensei. What did you do to him? Shouted a blonde with 4 ponytails, I think her name is Tamari. I didn't do anything with him. I just put a very strong seal that no one except the person who put it and any other member of my clan can remove. This seal changed the one that had been placed earlier. She suppresses the tailed one, not allowing her to influence her Jinchuriki. Gaara can easily take the one-tail's chakra without going overboard or losing control. He can sleep peacefully now, I told the Sonovites, carefully watching their reaction. Judging by their white faces and nervous glances, they came to this exam for a reason and were counting heavily on Gaara. And the news about the changed seal spoiled their plans for something. I'll ask everyone to return to their seats. There is only one fight left and I don't think we should expect a verdict from the scoreboard. I'll ask those who remain to come down and give their names, I said and, waiting for the request order to be fulfilled, I looked at those standing in the arena. This was the same girl with red hair, from whom you feel something familiar and warm. Opposite her is a strange guy who cannot really be described. His hair was hidden by a purple bandan, glasses hid his eyes, and his clothes were somewhat reminiscent of the ones Kabuto was wearing. Uzumaki Aiko, the girl said, and then I realized that she was the first to comment on my condition when the situation with Hugo happened. Yuri Akato, he introduced himself, without even looking in my direction. In principle, he was not interesting to me either. But Uzumaki is very much so. It's interesting to watch a clan member in battle. Let's start. Without thinking twice, I gave the command to start and retreated. I watched them very carefully, especially the red-haired one. Akato began to quickly approach, for some reason putting his hand forward. But Aiko avoided being grabbed by jumping back and then quickly moving behind him. Probably no one noticed her movements except me, Sasuke, Shisui, and Kakashi, and Lee and Guy. Uzumaki quickly began to form the seals of a technique that I immediately recognized. It mostly refers to symbolic seals, which need to burn certain signs into the air, like the one I used. However, this is the highest skill, which not all Uzumaki are capable of. But this technique also has a downside. It is lighter and less chakra intensive. It is based on filling a large number of seals, which are activated after completion and drink chakra. This technique is a kind of barrier that absorbs the enemy's chakra if he resists and tries to get out. It will be interrupted when the enemy has the bare minimum remaining, just to maintain life. But if you use symbol burning, then this barrier will suck out the chakra completely, regardless of whether the enemy resists or not. It will not disappear on its own, it can only be removed and only by the one who applied it. Fuinjutsu, dihedral barrier. Uzumaki said and put her hands on the floor. That means she is still learning and is at the entry level, namely E rank. Beginners can set up a two-sided barrier, they are taught at first. It is the weakest, although it is based on symbolism. However, when you know other, higher rank barriers, you stop using the dihedral one automatically. Judge, I'm done. He won't be able to fight anymore. Looking at Akato, I nodded in agreement and announced. The winner is Uzumaki Aiko. Now I'll ask those who went through the third stage to come down, I said, and after waiting for everyone to come down, I continued. The third stage will take place in a month. This time is given to you to prepare and ensure that all invited guests arrive. Now Anko will approach everyone with a box containing sheets of paper with numbers. You take them out and call your number. This will determine the sequence of fights. Having said this, Anko began to approach everyone. And they, in turn, took out pieces of paper and voiced out the numbers. Shisui wrote everything down, noting who would fight whom. After Aiko gave the number, he handed me a sheet of notes. After reading the contents, I said. First fight, Uchiha Sasuke vs Hugo Neji. Having said this, I noticed how Sasuke grinned unkindly and how his eyes flashed with anticipation. I chuckled and continued. Second fight, Shikamaru Nara vs Sabaku no Temari. Third fight, Haruno Sakura vs Shino Aburame. Fourth fight, Dog no Kankuro vs Kanuto Dosu. And finally, the fifth fight, Uzumaki Aiko vs Sabaku no Gara. The battles will take place in this sequence at the third stage, which will take place in a month. Prepare harder and don't disgrace the honor of your village. Now you can leave the tower. With these words, I began to watch as everyone began to disperse. Only my team, Kakashi-san, Shisui, and Aiko remained in the hall. Naruto Harem, will you train me this month? Sasuke asked me, coming up to me. No, Kakashi-san will train you. Sakura, go to the summoning and continue your training. Just don't forget to warn your teacher that you have an exam in a month, I said, to which I received a nod from the girl, but Sasuke began to be indignant. But Naruto Harem? The younger Uchiha exclaimed, looking at me with displeasure. Sasuke, listen to Naru, she won't give bad advice. And I'll occasionally train you with the Sharingan. Shisui climbed in, looking at his cousin with chuckles in his eyes. I ignored this remark, keeping my eyes fixed on the Uzumaki. She hesitated greatly and clearly wanted to say something, but did not dare. So I decided to push her towards it. And you, it seems, Uzumaki Aiko, am I right? I turned to her, to which she nodded hesitantly. Do you want to say something? I said softly, wagging my tail and twitching my ears. I was also a little nervous, after all, she is one of the Uzumaki. Master, can I ask you to become my teacher? This is very interesting and strange. She called me a master, and even addressed me with respect. This is a little unusual for me, but it's too much. I just raised my eyebrow in surprise, looking questioningly at Uzumaki. You see, I'm an orphan. Mom and Dad managed to give me only the very basics of Fuin, after which they died on one of the missions that our village gave them. After that, I began to study seals myself, but I was not very successful in this. I only know E ranks and a few D ranks. How me and my team were sent to Konoha for the exam. During the second stage, my team died, and I had to create clones and put Hyongo on them, as well as a holding seal so that they would not dissipate ahead of time. This was necessary in order to pass the stage. I ordered them to lose, and then to disperse when the qualifiers were over and it was time to return. I have no one to turn to. It was a shock for me when I saw you, Master. I didn't know that there were other Uzumaki besides me. I ask you, Master, let me become your student and stay in Konoha next to you, Aiko said and bowed deeply. Everyone present in the hall was shocked, including me and the Hokage, who was also present here. Can I first find out something before I make a decision? I asked, looking at her thoughtfully. She straightened up and nodded. Why did you call me Master and why did you address me as you and even very respectfully? Well, of course. You are a master because you can use high-rank seals, and even symbolic ones, using a set of hand seals and burning symbols in the air using chakra. This is beyond skill. Only the most powerful Uzumaki seal masters are capable of this. And I address you as you because you are the Harem of the clan. Only the main branch of Uzumaki could summon and control the chains. Quite unexpected. I would even say very unexpected. No, of course, I knew that my mother was not an ordinary Uzumaki, but I did not even imagine that she was the Harem of the clan. And somehow I didn't even think much about skill. And here it is. Hokage-sama, can I count on you to come to an agreement with the village of Aiko-chan? I turned to the Hokage, to which I received a kind smile. Which everyone falls for. No, he's a good old man, but he's too old, and his balls are stuck in his rollers. He began to turn a blind eye to too many things. Of course, Naruto, he said. I just nodded meagerly and turned to the Uzumaki awaiting my decision. Okay, I'll take you as a student. I think it wouldn't hurt for us to rest now, and then we'll discuss everything in more detail, and, without waiting for an answer, I grabbed Aiko and Sasuke by the hands, and Shisui hugged me around the waist with one hand, after which he made a seal of concentration with the other hand and we moved. Today has been too tiring not only for me, but for others as well. We need a little time to have a good rest and digest the information received. So after we found ourselves in our house, we, without saying a word, went to bed. Sasuke showed Aiko the guest room and went to his own room. Well, me and Shisui go to my room. None of us even bothered to eat dinner, let alone clean up and change clothes. We all collapsed on the bed in what we were wearing. The only thing I noticed before falling asleep was Kurama, who had crawled out, climbed into his basket and curled up, falling asleep. The morning of the next day came quietly and too calmly. At least for our family. Well, I mean, I didn't wake up because Sasuke poured water on me, I wasn't thrown out of bed, and I wasn't blatantly woken up by screams right in my ear. I was awakened by the bright sun, whose rays shone into my eyes, and from the fact that they kissed me on the top of my head. I felt so good and pleased from the realization that I had finally woken up on my own, and that I had slept and had a good rest, that I didn't want to get up anywhere and not go to training. I was so lazy that I just brazenly occupied Shisui, not allowing him to get up. Naru, maybe you'll let him go already? Otherwise, we will die of hunger. And it didn't hurt to get myself in order, Shirkuan said, looking at me with a slight smile on his face. Don't worry, we won't die. Let's lie down a little more and soak up the peace and quiet, otherwise when the others wake up, we won't be able to do this, I answered, changing my position. Now my head was on Shisui's shoulder, and my arms were wrapped around his torso. To be honest, at first I was wildly embarrassed to sleep in the same bed with him, but then I got used to it, and I even felt comfortable and cozy. About 5 minutes passed like this. We might have continued to lie like this if not for the red ball of fur, called kurama. Who would have thought that the nine-tailed fox would become a pet? I can hear everything, little one. I heard the fox's voice in my head. No, he still has the audacity to eavesdrop on my thoughts. I'll lock him in my subconscious and won't let him out for 2 weeks, or even a month. We'll know how to eavesdrop on its wearer's thoughts next time. Don't lock me up. Who will wake you up when the Uchiha sleeps? And in general, I'm cute, white and fluffy. You can't offend me. Is that you, white and fluffy? Do not make me laugh. You can do such a mischief that you won't be able to clean up the consequences for weeks. So shut up and get out of my head, I said, and continued to bask in the warm bed next to Shisui. But apparently they won't let me be lazy this morning. The impudent fox jumped on me with all his might and began to trample on me. Kurama, I exclaimed, abruptly rising from the bed. Hey, what about me? Shisui was indignant, also standing up sharply. Why are they lying around? It's high time I was fed, said the flea-beard one, nobly running his claws along his arm, after which he jumped onto the floor and trudged out of the room. What an impudent face, I hissed, looking displeased at the door where Kurama had disappeared a minute ago. Okay, I think it's time for us to get up. You still need to come up with a training plan with Aiko, Shisui said, getting out of bed. I sighed heavily and also got out of the warm bed. Without thinking twice, I took my regular clothes and headed to the bathroom. Having cleaned myself up and finally woken up, I got out of the shower and went down to the first floor into the kitchen. Noticing how Shisui headed into the vacated bathroom. Sasuke and Aiko were still sleeping, so I decided to do breakfast myself, deciding to let them sleep longer. Having preheated the frying pan, and taking out several eggs and breaking them into a hot frying pan, I waited for them to fry a little. Meanwhile I started chopping tomatoes, green onions, and pieces of meat. When the eggs were sufficiently fried, I added the onion, mixing it and tomatoes, after which I mixed it and added pieces of meat. Mixing again, added spices, added a little salt and pepper, then covered with a lid and left to fry over low heat. Meanwhile, she put the kettle on to heat up and brew tea. After about 5 minutes, I turned off the gas and opened the lid, thereby releasing the steam. Naruto, have you really decided to cook breakfast yourself? Asked a boyish voice behind me. I turned around and smiled at Sasuke, Shisui, who managed to go down and sit down at the table, and also Aiko, who was hesitating near the entrance to the kitchen. Aiko, don't be shy, come in and sit down. Breakfast is almost ready. Let's eat and discuss the training plan for the next month, I said, looking at the embarrassed girl. She smiled slightly and walked into the kitchen, sitting down next to Sasuke. At the same time, I laid out the prepared food on plates and placed it on the table, putting down the cutlery, mugs, and a kettle of brewed tea. We sat down at the table next to Shisui and started eating breakfast. While we ate, neither of us spoke. I don't know what the others were thinking, but thoughts were running through my head about the training I would give to Aiko. First, you can test her strength and knowledge in the field of Fuin, then check her physical readings, ingenuity, endurance, and stamina. Check for elements or any other abilities. And only then teach her a few simple Fuin techniques, and the elements, if any. Perhaps even improve sensory skills, if any. I think this training plan will be suitable for the first time. For all these thoughts, I didn't notice how breakfast had come to an end and everyone was looking at me expectantly. That means so. Sasuke, as I told you yesterday, you will train with Kakashi, he will teach you new techniques and increase your speed. Although you are fast, you are not fast enough for the third stage, there will be participants there who are much faster than you. Shisui will help with training from time to time, developing your Sharingan and teaching you new illusions. As for you Aiko, first I will look at your strength and knowledge in the field of Fuinjutsu, check your physical skills, ingenuity, endurance and other abilities, if any. Next, based on what you demonstrate, I will create a training schedule for you. But I can say for sure that it will include several simple Fuina techniques, the study of elemental techniques and sensory skills. This should be enough for the third stage. After its completion, I will take up your preparation and training closely. Well, now, I think it's time for us to part ways. Sasuke, find Kakashi, he is already aware that he has to train you this month, I said, having finished explaining further plans. What about Sakura? Sasuke asked, looking at me expectantly. She will continue to learn from her summon. I told her about this yesterday. I think Sakura is already there. I will only hope that she will finally change, I answered the question posed. Haruno really isn't a bad person and she has the potential to become a good combat medic with such perfect chakra control. But her stubbornness, arrogance, selfishness and fan dependence on Sasuke ruin everything. Are you sure it can be fixed? Sasuke asked doubtfully. And I understood his skepticism in my words. But, nevertheless, there is a chance, since after the first visit she became a little calmer and more reasonable. Yes, Sasuke. I know her call. Tsunade has one like this. And he takes a rather responsible approach to training future doctors. Sakura has great potential. In the future, she can become a strong combat medic. Besides, later I'll introduce her to Tsunade, she should beat all the out of her that Haruno will have left, I said. Rubbing my fists in anticipation of fun. I don't intend to tolerate her outbursts. If the call and Tsunade fail, I will take over. Then things won't go well for her. Okay, it's time for us to go. I think this month will be busy, and we will see each other very rarely. Bye, Sasuke, Shisui. After patting the younger Uchiha on the head and kissing Shisui, I turned to the girl. Let's go Aiko. We have a lot to do and little time. With these words, I headed towards the exit from the house, noticing how Aiko followed me. Leaving the Uchiha quarter, we walked along a busy street towards the distant training grounds that are located on the Hokage Rock. It was the best place to train in clan seals. We walked in silence. I was in front, showing the way to the training place, but for some reason Aiko walked behind, several steps behind me. I felt this awkwardness in the air, her doubts, fear and embarrassment. But I also felt admiration and awe, again, for me. I couldn't understand what her condition was, and it made me feel uneasy. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw how she wanted to say something, but at the very last moment she changed her mind and continued to remain silent. This made me very nervous, so I myself decided to break the established silence. Aiko, if you want to say or ask something, don't be shy, say it, I said, smiling warmly. She raised her lowered head to me and stared at me with delight and admiration. Is it possible, master? Her question surprised me greatly, but after thinking a little, I decided to find out about it later. And not only is it possible, but it is also necessary. And in general, why such questions? I asked, looking at the girl walking behind me. No, honestly, her blind admiration is starting to scare me. It feels like I stepped into the shoes of Sasuke, who is being hunted by his eternal fan Sakura. I was greatly shocked by this performance. No, I don't need such happiness. We urgently need to re-educate her. Well, you see, master, when my parents were alive, they told me how to behave with someone who is higher than you in rank and status. Especially with the master and the head of the clan. They also said that if I become a student of a master, Then from now on his word is law for me, and the master becomes an undeniable authority for me. I have always remembered my parents' words and try to follow them, Aiko said, lowering her head slightly. Now everything has become clear and understandable to me. But all the same, I feel uneasy from her laudatory speeches and looks. Listen to me, Aiko-chan. What your parents said is undoubtedly true. However, there is no need to rush from one extreme to another. You, and only you, are able to decide your destiny. The advice and instructions of teachers and those who are senior in rank, who have more experience, and those who are older than you in age, need to be listened to and taken into account, but you must make decisions yourself. Adults always help their children and students learn about life, but no one has the right to decide something for you. Remember this. And you shouldn't admire me so much. This makes me feel somehow unusual and uncomfortable. Yes, and we're the same age, I said, smiling and winking at the embarrassed and puzzled girl, so get it out of your head and start acting as usual. Walk next to me and ask what you want, I said, ruffling the red-haired top of her head, turned around and walked further along the chosen path. Apparently Aiko was confused, but quickly pulled herself together and caught up with me. Master, tell me where you got your ears and tail from? The girl asked, looking at my fox accessories. Well, there was one incident that happened when I was a child. It's too long to tell, and it's related to secret information, which is currently prohibited from being shared. But the point is that because of this incident, I grew not only externally, but also internally. In terms of the structure of my body, I also became beyond my age, and fox attributes appeared. When I saw myself in the mirror in the morning, I screamed so loudly that it could probably be heard right outside the village. I woke everyone up then, and made a lot of noise. I told part of the story, hiding my furry friend. A limited circle of people know about this, half of whom are no longer alive. Well, whoever is inside me doesn't know, except maybe the dog. And even that is not a fact. They just know this, they know it, but they don't talk about it. I used to get it often, but now everything is quiet and calm. This is probably due to the fact that I was in ANBU, and I carried the title of Jonin for a reason. Moreover, it became famous all over the world. Master, tell me, will you tell me this story in more detail when possible? Asked the young Uzumaki. I thought about this question. I think I can tell you in the future when I understand that she has become a family to me. Previously, I would have immediately told her, not only because she is my student, but also from the same clan. But now, after I have been through so much, my heart and soul are closed to all outsiders, even if they are from my clan, students, or just acquaintances and comrades. It opens only to those who have become family to me. They are currently 2 Uchihas and fellow ANBU. Someday, I'll tell you, I finally answered. And then I realized that we had already reached the right place. Well, here we are. This place will become your training area for the next 3 months. The training will be tough. You have to give it your all to reach the top. But do not forget that after 3 months have passed and after the end of the exam, training will resume. Now, let's start testing you, I said, looking sternly at my student and fellow clanmate. How exactly will my training go? Aiko asked, looking at me with an interested look. I grinned and stood in a sparring stance. We will spend, I began, accumulating chakra in my fist, after which I attacked the student with almost full speed. Fight, I finished, striking with chakra concentrated in my fist. POV of Saxony. After Naruto and Aiko left, I looked at Shisui with an inquisitive gaze. But no matter how hard I tried, he did not react to this, continuing to think intensely about something. Several minutes passed like this until I couldn't stand it and asked directly. Shisui, what kind of training will we have? Naruto Harem said that I will train with Kakashi-sensei and with you. But she didn't say anything more specific, I said, frowning. Shisui flinched at my voice, apparently lost in his thoughts. But this does not take away the fact that we need to train so that I can better prepare for the upcoming stage. I think you should find Kakashi-san for now so that he can draw up a schedule for you, and then, based on this, I'll come up with my own schedule. Still, Kakashi-san is your main teacher. I will most likely be training you with the Sharingan and illusions. Maybe I'll teach you a couple of fire elemental techniques, he said thoughtfully, looking somewhere at the ceiling. But, Shisui, you will be much more useful than Kakashi-sensei. I said indignantly, not wanting to admit that I would be taught by a lazy shinobi and a pervert. Naruto Harem once told me what books our sensei reads. Somehow I don't want to learn it, otherwise it will teach me all sorts of obscenities. Who knows what the pervert has in mind? Here, I looked at Shisui, who for some reason blushed very red, then turned pale. Now this is interesting. Shisui, don't tell me that you also read these books with dubious content? I asked, which made me watch him blush even more. And here, I grinned so maliciously. I need to take advantage of this and blackmail him into training me. How interesting. I think Naruto Harem will be interested to know what kind of literature her fiancé reads, I said, looking at the reaction that was not long in coming. Do not dare. He shouted, looking from side to side, as if fearing something, or rather someone. Sasuke, let's agree that you won't tell Naruto anything, and all for this. You will train me instead of Kakashi-sensei, I said, with an impassive face. I'd love to train you, but Kakashi can really teach you something new. For example, his personal technique, which he invented himself. You can't master it without the Sharingan and highly developed speed. It is quite powerful, almost on par with the fourth Hokage's Rasengan. Most likely, he will teach you it, plus he will develop even greater speed than you have, as Naruto said. Well, I will teach you strong illusions, use the Sharingan to the fullest, as well as several techniques of the elements of fire. But for my training, I need to know Kakashi-san's schedule. So go and find him. And about what you found out. Somehow I'll take you to a place where they serve dishes made from nothing but tomatoes, said this asshole. He knows that he takes advantage of my love for tomatoes. But on the other hand, the prospect of learning a new technique that is almost equal to the fourth's technique is very attractive to me. So it's a sin to refuse such a thing. But if he teaches me obscenities, I will tell Naruto Hime everything, and even a bribe in the form of a place where they cook dishes with only tomatoes will not stop me. So that. Okay, deal. Then I went to look for the perverted sensei, I said, and moved towards the exit of the house. And you behave completely differently when you are at home. Are you trying to maintain your image in front of a crowd of fans? Shisui asked me sarcastically when I was still at home. Was all he heard from me in response. Well, I can't admit that I like this behavior and attention. And even though since the death of my brother, I stopped liking Konoha, and I began to behave like a block of ice with strangers, this does not take away the fact that at home with my loved ones I become myself. And only Naruto Harem knows how hard it is for me to behave differently with others. For all my thoughts, I didn't even notice how I reached the place where Kakashi-sensei should be. Apparently, he was already waiting for me. This was evident from where he looked from time to time when he looked up from his book. You finally arrived, Sasuke. Naruto asked me to train you this month so that you can prepare more thoroughly for the third stage. A little later, I will contact Shisui and we will coordinate your schedule. Well, for now, we should go to the training place, Kakashi-sensei said, after which he touched my shoulder and moved me somewhere. We found ourselves in some mountainous terrain, apparently this was to make it easier to train Kakashi's technique. I think you've already been told what I will teach you, the sensei said with a certain laziness in his voice, to which I only nodded in agreement. Then, first of all, you need to increase your speed. Tell me, Sasuke, you followed Rock Lee's fight closely, didn't you? He asked me. And I thought, I remember who bears this name. After which a boy a couple of years older than me in a green tights, with a bowl haircut, thick eyebrows, and large round eyes appeared before my eyes, and his teacher, whom this Lee looked a lot like, also appeared. I shuddered sharply, after which I swallowed and nodded in agreement. I remembered how during the qualifying matches I closely followed him with my Sharingan turned on, copying his movements. He, of course, does not reach Naruto Harem, but he is also quite fast. My speed was not even close to his. Then we will reproduce the movements that you copied. Then, I will show you my technique, explain the principle of operation, and after that you will hone its duration and quantity, regulating the supply of chakra. Is it clear? Sensei asked me when he finished explaining. To this I only nodded, gloomily and silently, in agreement. Then hard training began. I feel like I will be at home very rarely this month. End POV of Saxony. While attacking my student, I carefully watched her movements, noticing all the mistakes and nuances that needed to be corrected. For her age, she has well-developed accuracy, speed and, not surprisingly, sensory skills. The number of techniques is meager, but this is explained by the fact that her parents did not have time to teach her everything, and she studied most of them on her own. There are some shortcomings, but they are fixable. And the flexibility of her body does not let her down. All that remains is to find out her endurance and amount of chakra. After all, she is an Uzumaki, which means she should last longer in pairing than others. But, of course, I'm not even fighting at half strength, because I understand that she still has to grow to the required level of skills and experience. 4 hours have passed, and she is already exhausted, and her chakra is almost zero. She held out well, but is far from being a full-fledged Uzumaki of her age. As far as I know, 12-year-old Uzumakis last from 6 to 8 hours in pairing, which means that it did not increase their stamina. Only the nature of the Uzumaki saves her. After stopping the fight, I turned to Aiko. Not bad, but not good enough. You are undoubtedly superior to most genin, but you cannot defeat Sasuke, Neji, and Gaara. They are not much, but stronger than you. So there is a lot of work to be done on yourself. First of all, you will do physical training. To increase your stamina, I will set up an obstacle course using seals that you will complete every day. Next will be training with seals. For now, you won't study anything complicated, we don't have much time for that, but we will study what will help you at the 3rd stage. We will also determine your chakra element, and finally, medical techniques, and increase your sensory ability. I think we will manage it in these 3 months. Well, now, it's lunchtime, so let's go, have a snack and continue our training, I said, looking at Aiko. She has great potential and has the desire to become better than she already is. This is a good indicator. I think that thanks to hard training, she has every chance of becoming a master. Yes, master, she said, embarrassed. I smiled at her and patted her on the top of her head, after which I headed to Ramanea. Master, tell me, can I become a Konoha shinobi? She asked, lowering her head and staring at the ground. First of all, stop calling me a master, it makes me feel awkward. Better call sensei, I'm more used to it. Well, then, I asked the Hokage to sort out your situation. I think that soon you will become a full-fledged kunoichi of the leaf. After the last stage, you will be assigned to some team, for the first time, this is if you pass the Chunin exam, if not, then until you become higher in rank than geniuses, I answered, looking at the sky. Thank you, Moss, that is, sensei. She became even more embarrassed after calling me sensei. And she's quite shy for an Uzumaki. Maybe this is all because she is in another village with strangers? Or is she naturally that shy? Looking at her, I remember Hinata, whom I met during the exam. She is just as shy, but determined and brave, which is what I liked about her. Perhaps Aiko will soon be able to adapt and get used to us, revealing her true character. If this happens and she remains the same shy person, then she is an exception to the rule about Uzumaki. If you consider that all Uzumaki are not sugar in character, then you yourself are an Uzumaki, and your character is calm, like a boa constrictor, a growling voice rang out in my head. So remember what I can be. I am only part Uzumaki, although all the genes were passed on to me, this does not mean that the character is too. But Aiko is a purebred Uzumaki. So, by definition, she cannot be calm. We can't sit still, I said, indignant at what the fox said. So you can't sit still. Always sewing in one place. Especially when you drink and gamble. You should stop with this, Kurama growled. And I almost screamed out loud at this statement. Just don't start blowing my mind. And in general, go on sleeping and don't interfere with my thoughts. Otherwise, I'll give it to little children to tear to pieces. You know how much they love furry animals? Having sarcastically sung the last sentence, I began to wait for his reaction. Not to these young monsters. They'll roll all my fur into balls. And anyway, I am the great fox demon, not some stuffed animal. He growled and fell silent. I quietly chuckled at him, at his majesty. He had long ago become like Tun Tun, the pig that Shizun had when we first met. Same thing. So don't you dare lecture me, I said and fell silent. While we were having such a humorous conversation, I didn't even notice how we reached Ichiraku. Well, here we can have lunch. They make the most delicious ramen in the world here, I said, going inside the small establishment. Oh Naruto, I haven't seen you for a long time. Who is this with you? Said Tucci, the owner of this establishment. This is my student, Uzumaki Aiko. Can you make us a portion of ramen? Introducing my ward, I asked, looking at the old man and his daughter I am. It's nice to meet you, Aiko said quietly, bowing. Tucci and I am smiled at the shyness and bowed in greeting in return. Certainly. Everything will be ready soon, said the old man, preparing the main ingredients for ramen. Then a shabby Sasuke, who could barely move, entered the establishment. Can I have one serving, said the Uchiha, sitting down at the counter. The owner of the shop just nodded, without looking up from his work. How is your first training going, Sasuke? I asked him. Kakashi-sensei really exhausted me. He made me run with weights that were heavier than what I train with. And it was terrible, he said, lowering his head on the table. I just looked at him sympathetically, realizing that this means running with a weight that is more than what you can lift. I went through this to improve my speed. It's okay, Sasuke. But this will help you become even faster than you are now, I said, and then began to eat the dish that had just been provided to me. I hope I can survive these 3 months at this pace, he shook his head sadly, also starting to eat, like Aiko. We ate in silence. Everyone thought about their own. I don't know what was going on in those two's minds, but I only had one thought. That I will return home and see Shisui, not soon. The training is going very well. Aiko shows an incredible result, which is quite surprising. Although this is not surprising, she is still an Uzumaki, and that says it all. For a representative of the Uzumaki clan, it is in the order of things to study the assigned task as quickly as possible. And this is not to mention the fact that quite little time is devoted to training one technique. Although Aiko shows incredible results, she still has to learn and study to get to the desired level. If she had started studying from an early age, she would have long ago caught up with the children of her age in the Uzumaki clan. At least I read that Uzumaki genin are equal in strength to a weak jonin or a strong chunin. And Aiko was only close to moving from weak chunin to average chunin. I would train her more, but there's almost no time left. In 3 days the third stage will begin, at which she must be present. Therefore, for these 3 days she will rest from training and gain strength. Yes, and I really missed Shisui. Still, I didn't see him for a whole month, constantly spending the night at the training site. And so, Aiko. Our training has come to an end. In 3 days there will be the third stage, so have a good rest and show everything that Uzumaki is capable of. But, sensei, I want to practice some more. There is still time before the start of the stage. My student exclaimed, looking at me with a pleading look. Perhaps I would have succumbed to her persuasion if it weren't for the fact that I really missed Shisui. And rest will not hurt her. Still, there will be quite strong opponents there. What is Sasuke worth, not to mention the one-tailed Jinchuriki? Even though I strengthened the tailed seal, this does not mean that it will be easy. Perhaps someone from the sand was able to weaken my seal during this time. I couldn't. There are no print masters left in the world. You're probably one of a kind. But there are other strong shinobi who master seal techniques. They may well weaken the seal, or even remove it completely. Cannot. Those who master the seal techniques have stolen the knowledge of the Uzumaki clan. They cannot fully master them because they lack chakra and abilities. Besides, those shinobi are not able to weaken the seals of the master of the Uzumaki clan, let alone remove them, said the red hairball. But if you believe Kurama's words, then this is really true. At this point in time there are no real masters. Because there is little left of the Uzumaki clan. There are hardly 5 of us. At least I only know Aiko. Sensei? The student distracted me from my thoughts. I turned my thoughtful gaze to her and looked at her carefully. Sorry, but no. You need rest and gain strength before the upcoming test. You must not let down not only me, your teacher, but first of all yourself. You must prove that the Uzumaki clan is still alive and continues to live, even though there are few of us left. And if you are tired and have half your strength, you can easily lose. And your opponents did not sit idly by all this time. They also trained and became stronger. So it will be very difficult for you to cope with the task. That's why we're returning home, I said and put my hand on Aiko's head and stroked her hair. I understand, Sensei, the girl said and smiled cheerfully. After that, we went down to the village and immediately went towards the house. We walked in silence, enjoying the freshness of Konoha's early morning. Eateries had just begun to open, attracting early shoppers. Some shops were already in full operation, generating income. Many residents have already left their cozy homes, walking along the streets or going about their business, and some to work. Some children were frolicking around playing children's games, students were rushing to class, and genin were rushing to meet with their mentor in order to start training or go on a mission. The chunin and jonin were returning from missions or just going on them. But many patrolled the streets, keeping order. However, the third stage of the exam is about to begin and many come from other countries to watch the battles of young shinobi. Sometimes it seems to me that my reasoning reminds me of an old woman, especially when I start talking about genin, as if they are little, unintelligent children who have seen little in their lives, and I am a 40-year-old woman or older, looking at children with condescension, even though we are the same age. And I really don't like this. This is not surprising. Still, you are a special case. Your body and brain, along with your consciousness, are far from childish. Based on your body structure, you can start having children right now and your body won't do anything from it. It's the same with consciousness. The reasoning of an adult should not surprise you. Don't forget who you are. It's also the fact that you can give birth without consequences for you, said a growling voice in my head. And when the meaning of his words reached me, I instantly blushed, not knowing where to put my eyes and trembling hands. Kurama. I was indignant, trying to hide my awkwardness and blushing. What Kurama? I've been like Kurama for many years now. And I don't see anything embarrassing here. I'm wondering how you'll handle Shisui when you... Kurama. I exclaimed before he could finish. I blushed even more, feeling incredibly hot. I couldn't give an exact explanation for everything that was happening, but my body's reaction to the fox's words alarmed me. Are you okay? You're all red, my student said, bringing me out of the not-so-decent thoughts that had managed to form while I was lost in thought. I'm completely fine. I just felt a little hot, I lied, blushing even more. Exactly? Yes. Never mind. We'd better go home quickly, I said, trying to hide my embarrassment and awkwardness from this situation. Looking sideways at Aiko, I realized that she didn't believe me, because she was looking at me with some suspicion. After taking a few deep breaths, I began to calm down, but the blush still remained on my cheeks. I only hoped that it would subside completely before I met Shirkuan or someone I knew saw me. About. Look who I see. Exclaimed a painfully familiar vile voice. I cursed and grimaced with anger and disgust. And I would rejoice at these emotions if they helped the embarrassment and heat go away. But my cheeks were still burning, and my body heat still wouldn't go away. I think I warned you not to appear in front of my eyes? I said without emotion. I can say with confidence that my voice sounded very cold and I felt anger. Judging by Aiko's flinch. She looked at me in surprise, apparently not expecting such anger. And what will you do, huh? This trash asked me defiantly. How she infuriates me. Rrrr. I think I said that you shouldn't cross my path? Did you say? Do you want to know what could happen to you? In this case, no one will save you. Rrrr. I growled, and the fox's chakra began to flow through my veins even more and more intensely. The tail stood up, the ears stood up, and the hair unraveled and rose up, dividing into 9 parts. Teacher? Aiko squeaked at the edge of her consciousness. Her fear was clearly palpable, as was the horror of the litter. She was shaking like a leaf, her eyes darting, apparently looking for a way to escape. But I won't let her escape. I will teach her a lesson that she will remember once and for all. Where are you going? I don't think I let you go, I growled, becoming covered in chakra. She finally played it out. As a rule, people don't play with fire, you can get burned. Naruto? Ram? What the is going on here? Naruto. A surprised voice shouted, and the familiar chakra began to move closer and closer to me. I began to approach this. I don't even have the words to say something decent. Although decent and this girl are incompatible. You are Naruto's student, am I right? Aiko, I think? Why yes, and you? I'm Naruto's best friend, my name is Yukiri. Tell me what happened here? What didn't they share again? And who started it first? Just give me the most important thing. And don't shake so much, everything will be fine. Well, that girl who was trying to escape, came up to us, and turned to Naruto-sensei. The teacher said that she warned her not to appear in front of everyone, after which the girl answered with sarcasm, I didn't really understand, because I was scared. The teacher radiated coldness and rage. After which the teacher began to become covered with chakra, her eyes turned red, and everything that you see now. What's with her? And who is this girl? Clear. So Ram didn't get enough of a thrashing from me. Apparently she didn't learn her lesson. Listen, Aiko. I'll try to calm Naruto down now, but feeling like it won't work. Your task is to run to Shisui and say that Naruto is furious, and if she is not stopped, there will be casualties. Tell me that Ram is back to her old ways. He will understand immediately. Only Shisui can stop and calm Naruto. Do you understand everything? Yes, Yukiri-san. I heard the entire conversation that was happening next to me, but muffled. I think Yukiri sent Aiko after Shisui or something. I'm worried about something else now. How can I deal more painfully with Rem? Yes, so that she remembers this lesson once and for all, or better yet, remains crippled, so that all the injuries inflicted remind her of what will happen if you do not listen to my warning. Naruto, calm down, please. Ram won't come near you again, I promise. She will completely forget about your existence. Just calm down. Yukiri stood in front of the blast furnace, trying to stop and calm her down. But it only made me angrier. She won't understand ordinary words. She needs something more substantial. And it is pain and fear of death that will help me with this. Go away, Yukiri. I growled, advancing on Rem and my friend. Please go away. Let me deal with her. P.F. As if she would do something to me. If she tries to harm me, she will be immediately captured and put in prison, said this trash. Rrrr. Shut up. You are not such an important person that a promising and strong jonin should be imprisoned because of you. They'll sooner lock you up and send you for interrogation than Naruto. So shut up, before I actually let Nara do what she's up to. Thank God, I made it. Said a familiar and beloved male voice. How I missed him, who would know? But not now. For starters, Ram. Therefore, so that no one had time to come to their senses, I jumped between them like lightning, and at that very second I found myself near this rubbish. She raised her hand with her claws, and struck with all her strength and with unprecedented speed. Before she could come to her senses, her face was covered in deep scratches, running from her temple to her neck, crossing her left eye, nose, and lips. I again raised my hand to strike again, but I was stopped by a man's hand, which grabbed my palm, and with the other hand he hugged my waist, pressing me to his chest. A cry of pain was heard coming from Remington. I turned my gaze to her and saw how she was pressing the wound with her hands, trying to stop the bleeding. She screams and writhes in pain, bleeding. She cries and looks at me with eyes crazy with fear. I warned you not to get in my way, but you didn't listen. Yukiri told you, but you didn't listen again. Now you were learning a lesson that I should have taught you a long time ago. If you haven't learned it now, I can repeat it. Tearing my hand out and twisting out of the embrace, I again found myself in front of her and again prepared for the blow. But this time I was stopped by a tight hug and a kiss. Having blinked my eyes and realizing that this man turned out to be Shisui, I closed my eyes and went limp, returning the kiss. I didn't hear Rem's screams of pain, I didn't hear the relieved sigh of Yukiri and Sasuke, which I didn't even notice. And a slightly relaxed Aiko. I was so glad and happy that I forgot about everything and didn't notice when Shisui pressed on my solar plexus. I only understood that I began to lose consciousness and how warm and strong hands lifted me, pressing me to themselves. And barely audible voices told me that I was still on the street. I woke up on the bed. Judging by the situation at home, I have a terrible headache, and my throat is also dry, as if I had been drinking for a week without stopping. My whole body aches, but I have no strength or desire to get up. My muscles don't listen to me, and I can't call anyone. My throat was so dry that it didn't allow me to make any sound, let alone say a whole sentence. This became an impossible task for me. There was not a single coherent thought in my head. Why I was in such a bad state, I had no ideas either. The only thing that saved me from despair was the memories of yesterday. With their help, I began to more or less understand what happened to me. "You've finally woken up, Naru." And she made everyone worry. The fox's voice was heard in my head. "Kurama? What happened? And how long was I unconscious?" I asked immediately in order to dispel most of the questions. "Don't you remember?" "I remember. But a simple blow to the solar plexus shouldn't make me feel so bad." "So what happened?" I answered, after which I asked my question again, trying to get up and take a half-sitting position. Which, in fact, failed miserably for me. "You didn't use my chakra, consciously. Therefore, in order for you to calm down, I had to keep you unconscious. However, this was not to last long. But you stayed there for 3 days, instead of 24 hours. But why? I've used your chakra before, what happened this time? Before, you didn't take so much, so you didn't lose control. But this time, due to the enormous amount of hatred, rage and anger, you took a lot. Plus, it was influenced by the negative emotions you were under at that moment. You started to lose control. Shisui arrived in time and was able to stop you. That girl ended up with a severe scar for life. If the Uchiha had not managed to stop you, you could have killed her. I hope I don't need to explain why you had to lie there for a day, instead of several hours? No. But then why am I lying here for 3 days? Stop. 3 days? Exam? What about the exam? It turns out he has already passed? I mentally exclaimed. What does this mean? Has the exam already passed, or will it take place today? But if today, how will I go in this state? I'm still an examiner. Yes. 3 days. But I don't know how this happened. Most likely, this was influenced by the fact that this is your first time taking so much of my chakra, or maybe emotional instability. And yes, I don't know what's wrong with your exam. You'd better ask Shisui, the fox said, after which his chakra separated from me and took the form of a fox. Jumping to the floor, he ran out of the room, leaving me with my thoughts. I have been using his chakra for a long time, however, there is no seal. However, she took only a minimum of his chakra and had not yet started training to control a large amount. And Kurama says it's too early. We removed the seal not long ago, and we also removed it without a key. Most likely, I will begin control only when I find and receive the key to the seal and remove it as expected. Therefore, loss of control of the wave is possible. You've finally woken up, Naru, Shisui's voice said, distracting me from my thoughts. You made me worry. Shisui, I'm so glad to see you, I said, smiling from the fact that I saw my beloved Uchiha and from the fact that he kissed my temple. Tell me, what about the exam? He's supposed to be here today, right? I asked, trying to sit up again. Shisui, noticing my efforts, helped me rise and leaned on the headboard of the bed, lifting the pillow with me to make it more comfortable. Everything is fine. The Hokage postponed the start date of the third stage by several days. Due to some difficulties. The exam will be in a week. So, you will have time to recover, Shirkuin said, smiling. How about I get you something to eat? And then will you take medicine to quickly restore your body? Okay, I smiled, watching Shisui leave our bedroom. I think this week is good for me. I need to rest and restore my emotions. Otherwise, they became very uncontrollable. Why? The week passed relatively calmly and without any incidents. Perhaps I'm exaggerating, and they still existed, but due to the fact that I spent whole days at home restoring my health and strength, and also brought my emotional background into a stable state, I simply didn't notice them? This may also be the case. However, I am inclined to believe that the week passed quietly and without incident. Since the exam was postponed a week ahead, Sasuke decided to spend this time in complete rest from training and constant workload. Aiko, at my suggestion, began studying the village, since after the exam the Hokage will negotiate with the village of Uzumaki Aiko so that it will come to us. Still, our clan was allied with Konoha, and after its destruction, clan members have every right to live on the territory of Konoha, and if we take into account the fact that the head of the clan lives in the leaf, that is, an ordinary member of the clan is obliged to be near the head. And throwing away a purebred Uzumaki is the height of stupidity. I think the old man wouldn't mind having another red-haired kunoichi in the village. Sakura returned from her summoning back when the incident with Rem occurred. According to Sasuke, she came to see me a couple of times, and what surprised the younger Uchiha more was that she didn't hang on to him like Velcro. She didn't come in after that, apparently she was busy with something. Well, somehow I was still too early for her. After the exam, it will be necessary to conduct a small behavioral test for her, and a strength test will need to be carried out, in fact, just like for Sasuke. I think that Aiko will be placed under my and Kakashi's command. Shisui also spent the whole day at home taking care of me. For some time I couldn't really move, let alone eat heavy food or drink alcohol. Although Shisui won't give me the latter under any pretext. Here he is. But that's not about that now. A week has passed and the day of the third stage of the exam has arrived. All preparations were completed, the guests arrived, the villagers made their bets, the genin trained and prepared for the upcoming battles, and the examiner had time to recover. The spectators slowly took their seats, the genin pulled themselves into the arena and quietly talked with their acquaintances. And I stood in the shade so that I could not be seen. After waiting for the last spectator to sit down and a few more minutes later, I looked at the Hokage and, having received a nod of agreement, went out to the standing genin. Naturally, they didn't notice me, and the noise in the arena contributed to this. Therefore, having poured a little chakra into her throat, she made 2 seals and stopped in concentration, inhaled more air and shouted. Silence in the arena. After my scream, everyone fell silent, and the genin turned their attention to me. Dear guests and residents of Konoha, we are pleased to welcome you to the third stage of the Chunin exam. Today there will be one-on-one battles based on the draw that the participants made at the preliminary stage. Everyone knows their serial number and table of battles that will take place today. Everyone was preparing for the day ahead, honing their old skills, learning new and more effective techniques, coming up with fight strategies, or some simply resting and gaining strength. Today is your day. You must not fall face first into the dirt. Show your best and accept defeat with pride. Remember that it depends only on your kage whether you become a chunin or remain a genin. Even if you lose, you can get a title. But this does not mean that you should deliberately lose. You must do everything in your power. The same goes for those who win. This doesn't mean a promotion yet. If the ruler thinks that you are not yet ready, you will not receive the title. However, the one who wins all the battles and becomes a finalist will definitely receive the title of chunin. And so, now I will announce the rules of today's fights. The first rule, and also the last, no rules. You can use whatever you want, there are no restrictions. However, if I deem it necessary, I can intervene and stop the fight. And one last word of advice. Try not to die and win the fight without killing your opponents. We don't need extra sacrifices. And now, I'll ask the first and second numbers to stay in the arena, and I'll ask the rest to go up to the balcony for the participants. Having said this, I began to watch as the genin headed to the indicated place, leaving in the arena those who would open the third stage of the exam with their duel. After a couple of minutes, there were only two left in the stadium, standing opposite each other and looking at their opponent with a searching gaze. Although no, it was Neji who looked at him studyingly, but there were not kind lights in Sasuke's eyes. Let's start. Having said this, she jumped to a safe distance and began to follow the fight. And if during the qualifiers you could rely on your instincts, then at this stage you need to carefully monitor everything that happens. Yes, I had a bad feeling since the morning, and now it has only intensified. And I was terribly infuriated by the fact that I could not determine where the danger was coming from and where to wait for it. Remembering how the Tsunovians turned pale after the news of the seal changes, I warned the Hokage earlier to strengthen security during the exam. However, this did not help calm my sense of danger. Meanwhile, Sasuke and Neji activated their eyes and stood in their clan stances. Neji began to grin, apparently already beginning to celebrate his victory. Although I don't think he has any chance. I don't argue, it's pretty strong for a side branch. He was even able to learn the main branch's techniques, making him a genius in his stream. However, Sasuke is much stronger. Without his eyes, Hugo is as blind as a kitten, and he only knows clan techniques and only relies on them. But I trained Sasuke in such a way that he could fight without his eyes. After all, anything can happen. And besides clan jutsu, Uchiha knows many elemental techniques and illusions that are not based on dojutsu and a couple of ordinary techniques. In all respects, Sasuke is stronger, and not lacking in intelligence. And he met my expectations. Sasuke began to run around Hugo as fast as he could, not allowing him to attack, let alone defend. He pelted his opponent with throwing weapons, hoping that at least one of them would hit the target at such speed, thereby bringing his victory closer. However, Neji stood up and spun along his entire axis, creating a dense vortex of chakra that pushed away all the weapons, including Sasuke. And this quite surprised me. Of course, I knew that he mastered the techniques of the main branch, but to know this is one thing, and to see with my own eyes is another. A very unusual phenomenon, I tell you, is to see the surprised faces of the members of the main branch of the Hugo clan who were sitting in their box. Looking at the smug Neji, I began to get irritated. I myself wanted to deal with him, but due to the fact that I am an examiner, I do not have the right to arrange battles with the participants. And it will look like beating of minors. Looking at my student, I nodded with satisfaction. Sasuke was preparing a fire technique. Now Hugo cannot use his spin, otherwise he will burn to the ground. He will either have to dodge or take over the technique. Either in the first case or in the second, Sasuke's victory is a foregone conclusion. Which is exactly what happened. Neji began to dodge the fire, but as he dodged, he fell into a Genjutsu trap. I nodded and announced the winner. Uchiha Sasuke won in the first battle. After the announcement of victory, Sasuke removed the illusion, and the arena began to applaud. The Uchiha looked at me with a smug and proud smile. I nodded my head and smiled, thereby showing that I was proud of him. After waiting for him to go up to the balcony, I announced the next battle. The next fight will take place between Shikamaru Nara and Dog no Temari. After which those named went down to the arena. This, as well as the subsequent battles, were not particularly interesting to me. The only thing that made me very happy was that Sakura was able to defeat her opponent. Sakura was able to change for the better. Her summoning training is over. After the exam, I will send her to the hospital to gain experience, and periodically I will train her in other areas. A little later I'll ask Tsunade to take care of her. Sakura is very capable in medicine, especially with her control and chakra reserves. The last battle between Uzumaki Aiko and Dog no Gaara. I announced, and then began to wait for the opponents to descend into the arena. The rules are still the same. If the battle gets out of control, I will intervene. Now, let's get started. Having gone to a safe distance, I began to monitor the participants. Everything started more or less normally. Gaara used his gourd sand, while Aiko used standard techniques without using seals or elements. 5 minutes later, Gaara began to go wild. He began to use more powerful techniques that contained the tailed chakra. The only thing that made me happy was that I didn't feel the Bija consciousness in the Jinchuriki's head. Aiko began to use the techniques of the Uzumaki clan. Although she has completely mastered the initial level of seals and some intermediate ones, this is still enough to win. The main thing is that everything ends well. Both have a lot of chakra. And if the dog has a large amount due to the tailed one, then Uzumaki naturally has a lot of chakra. The peculiarity of our clan, so to speak. But that's not about that now. Aiko had already moved on to the most complex technique in her arsenal. As I understand it, she was going to finish the battle using only Fuin. And I think this is the right decision. It is necessary to show that the Uzumaki clan is alive and does not intend to die. By the way, we need to look for the remaining members of the clan, and, if we can find them, drag them to Konoha. Fuinjutsu, Chakra Burning Seal. Red Barrier. First level. Having folded the required amount of seal, she pressed her palms to the ground, after which a red barrier with flashes of fire appeared around Gaara. This seal works in such a way that the chakra inside the barrier is burned. There are only 4 levels. At the first level, only the chakra that is surrounded is burned. In other words, even if you use 100 or 1,000 powerful or weak techniques, they will instantly evaporate. And since there is also a particle of chakra in the air, it is also burned. A person inside the barrier can use up all their chakra if they don't understand what's going on in time. At the second level, only the chakra that is inside a person is burned. This prevents shinobi from using their techniques. At the third level, the internal and external chakras are burned. This level is mainly used for shinobi of the Kage level or close to them. Our clan used the 4th level for Bijou and their Jinchuriki, who interact with their tailed creatures. Aiko's opponent belongs to the latter group and in a good way. She should use the 4th level. But at the moment, Gaara does not interact with the Bijou, but only takes his chakra, and the 4th level for Aiko will be too difficult and will consume almost all the chakra. She would sooner collapse from exhaustion than complete the technique. Her chakra channels are not yet fully developed to allow such a quantity to pass through at a time. Therefore, she did the right thing, and it will be just right for Gaara. As I expected, after a couple of minutes, Gaara realized what was happening and decided to give up. What was right in this situation? Aiko immediately cancelled the technique and turned to me. I nodded with approval and announced the winner. The winner of the last battle is Uzumaki Aiko. After that, feathers began to fall from the sky. It started to lead me, and I felt myself starting to fall asleep. Quickly making a seal of concentration and saying, "Kai, stabilizing the flow of his chakra. Looking around the stands, I noticed how ordinary people were falling down, and the shinobi of our village were taking the fight. Looking at the balcony, I saw Sasuke with his Sharingan activated and some genin. Looking at Aiko, I saw her fall to the ground. Apparently, she did not understand that it was a genjutsu or did not have time to interrupt it. Although our clan has always had a weakness for illusions, so we developed a special seal for this. But I haven't had time to install it for her or myself yet. And there was no time. Quickly running up to the student and touching her shoulder, I released my chakra into her body, thereby removing Aiko from the genjutsu. By this time, Sasuke had landed next to me, followed by Sakura, Kakashi, and Shisui. Naruto Harem? What do we have to do? Sasuke asked me, watching Aiko come to her senses. I think that you and Aiko will take care of the enemies that attacked the arena. Residents need to be protected. Sasuke, take all opponents away from the stands. Aiko, as soon as Sasuke is finished, put up a protective barrier. Can you maintain it for a long time? Or should I leave my clone for support? I asked, looking at the girl who had woken up. I can handle it, sensei. I nodded at these words and wanted to continue, but Kakashi beat me to it. Find all available genin who can fight. Say that this is my and Naruto's order. We need to protect the villagers and our guests. Sakura, you have wounded and support from the rear. If you notice that someone is approaching the defense group, immediately strike, and then your comrades will be able to find their bearings. Sakura nodded at these words, but after a couple of seconds, she decided to ask her question. And you, Kakashi-sensei, Naruto-sensei, Shisui-san? Shisui, and I will help fight back in the center of the village. Other jonins will also help you, fortunately there are enough of them in the arena. Well, and Naruto, Kakashi wanted to continue, but I interrupted him. And I'll go help Hokage-sama. I'm afraid he can't handle it alone, and at the moment I'm the only one who can provide him with support and assistance in battle. With these words, I got up from my knees and looked around the whole group. Since there are no more questions, we go to our places. Hi. The genin said and ran to the stands. Kakashi also disappeared. I was also about to go to the Hokage, when someone's hand intercepted me. Turning around, I saw Shisui, who for some reason was still here. Is there something wrong? There is nothing. Just be careful and don't expose yourself to blows, he said, looking into my eyes with a stern and at the same time caring and gentle look. I smiled at this and, coming closer to him, kissed him on the corner of his lips. You, too, be careful. With these words I disappeared, leaving only a transparent trace. I found myself at the top of the stands, where the Kage were sitting. There was a rather powerful barrier there that did not allow us to see and feel what was happening inside. I just sighed heavily and shook my head. Amateurs. They can't even put up a normal barrier. Any shinobi with advanced sensory abilities can sense the chakra behind the barrier. Yes. And with the help of dojutsu you can see what is happening. The Uzumaki, when creating it, would not have made such a mistake. Having folded the required combination of seals, drawn a symbol of partial removal in the air with chakra, folded a seal of concentration, I put my free hand on the barrier and passed the chakra for a push. After this action, a passage was formed, into which I quickly passed, after which the hole closed again. A not very good picture appeared before my eyes, which I would never want to see. A not very good picture appeared before my eyes, which I would never want to see. In the short time that was spent on the tailed one, a lot happened inside the barrier. The Hokage was severely wounded, but still held his own against the resurrected first and second Hokage. However, at this rate, he will not be able to defeat them, only seal them with the help of Shiki Fujin. Only this sealing technique does not require much preparation. In this case, Orochimaru will be able to escape, and there is a risk that he will attack Konoha again, and losing the Hokage in the current situation is not the best option. And I don't want to stand on the sidelines and watch Sarutobi sacrifice herself. So I quickly moved to the third, starting to put together seals for the technology. Hokage-sama, I came to help you. You can't do it alone, and I won't let you use the Shiki Fujin seal, I said, finishing folding the seals. What do you suggest? Now you'll see everything for yourself, Hokage-sama, I said, making the last seal. Fuinjutsu, Trigamic Seal, Level 1, Seal of Eternal Oblivion. After these words, I put one hand on the ground, directing chakra into it, and with the other hand I drew a sealing symbol in the air, and on top of it was a circle with a trigamic seal, inside of which there was a 7-pointed star, with symbols denoting certain elements. Having finished drawing the seal in the air, I put twice as much chakra into it as into the ground. It took no more than a minute, but it felt like 10 minutes had passed. This always happens when you print a symbol. However, in a minute nothing had happened, and the first and second Hokage didn't even have time to come to their senses when they found themselves in a black translucent barrier. And after a couple of seconds, a black funnel appeared, which in the two Hokages, sealing them away forever. They will no longer be able to be summoned using the resurrection technique. And to resurrect them again, you need an Uzumaki who owns symbolic seals and knows this technique. True, ideally I will be needed to remove the seal of eternal oblivion, since only the one who performed the sealing can rescue them from there. But that's not about that now. When Hashirama-sama and Tobirama-sama disappeared, there was silence for a moment, which was soon broken by the snake. I didn't expect that someone would know the symbolic seals of the Uzumaki clan, he said, looking at me with a strange look. Well, this is not surprising. How would you look if you saw in front of you a girl of about 16 with fox ears and a tail, with red hair, holding the long-forgotten seals of an ancient clan? That's what I'm talking about. In general, he had an unpleasant look, in my opinion. Would you like to join me? I will also give you strength, much greater than you can get in this village. No, I think I'll refuse your dubious offer. And I don't need to get power. I'm already strong. Will you remain whole or alive? That's the question, I said, baring my teeth and licking my lips in anticipation. I haven't met such a strong opponent for a long time. Hokage-sama, do you need time to recover? I asked, looking at the head of the village out of the corner of my eye. No need. I am quite capable of continuing the fight, he said, and summoned a monkey, which turned into a pole. Then let's begin, I said, making the seals of concentration and closing my eyes. The Hokage apparently realized that I needed time to accumulate chakra, so he began to distract the snake from me. True, his assumptions are a little wrong. Yes, I need time to accumulate chakra, but not for the technique. But in order to enter Sannin mode, it takes a little time. Although soon I will be able to enter Sannin mode in a matter of seconds. Presumably this will be in a year and a half. And after a couple of minutes, red circles formed around the eyelids, and red lines extended from them, creating an intricate pattern. The eyes became golden in color with a narrow pupil, and a pattern of the moon, also red, appeared on the forehead. My changes did not go unnoticed. The battle, which was gaining momentum, stopped as everyone felt an unusual chakra emanating from me. At their attention, I licked my lips and bared my teeth, anticipating a difficult and exhausting battle. And then everything started to turn around. I don't remember this battle well, as I was plunged into a kind of trance. All possible techniques were used, both from our side and from the enemy. True, I mainly used symbolic seals, barrier seals, restraining, blocking, attacking, and protective seals. Natural ones were practically not involved, and from time to time, they got close to each other in close combat. I don't know how miraculously I didn't use Kurama's chakra, but it remains a fact. However, even without the cover, I was very exhausted. The battle was intense, exhausting, and long. I don't know how much time has passed since my appearance, but after many hours of battle, we finally won. I remember this moment clearly. Noticing a gap in Orochimaru's defenses, I was able to get as close to him as I needed to place the prison seal. This seal creates a kind of lattice around a person that feeds on the chakra of the prisoner, making him almost an ordinary person. I placed another blocking seal on top of this seal, just in case. It will be necessary later, after rest and recovery, to redo the seals and put a couple of new ones. Sighing heavily, I sat down on the roof, looking around at the same time. The damage was severe, but not irreparable. Looking at the Hokage, I realized that he was in a deplorable state. Having blown up from her usual place, she rushed towards Hiruzen. After examining him for serious wounds, she began treatment. However, my chakra is not enough to heal completely. A maximum of a couple of small wounds will close. I won't be able to deal with more serious damage. The most important thing is that he lasts for some time before a new Hokage is elected. Perhaps he will be able to survive, but he will definitely no longer be a shinobi, since his chakra channels cracked in some places due to the heavy load, and in some places they completely ruptured. A couple of minutes after the start of treatment, I finally ran out of chakra. I already feel how my strength is running out, how my eyes are becoming leaden, how everything is starting to get dark for me. The last thing I remember was someone catching me near the ground and someone's voices, giving orders. I woke up from an unbearable squeak and from the bright sun. Opening my eyes, I stared at the ceiling of the hospital room. This was also indicated by the specific smell of pills and medicines. Wincing, I looked around the room, but didn't notice anything unusual until someone spoke. Looking in the direction where the sound came from, I noticed a man sitting on the sofa. And that someone turned out to be Shisui. "How are you feeling?" the guy asked, looking at me with a worried look. I listened to my feelings, moved my hands a little and turned my head, but I did not dare to get out of bed, as I felt weakness throughout my body. "Tolerable. Nothing hurts, but I feel weak," I said and smiled slightly. Shisui smiled at the corner of his lips and moved onto my bed, taking my hand. "It's good that nothing hurts. But you will feel weak for some time. You used up almost all your chakra, leaving only for maintaining life," he answered, patting me on the head, and then helped me get up and gave me water to drink. "What about Hokage-sama?" "He is in serious condition, and the doctor's forecasts are not encouraging. Sarutobi-sama came to his senses a few hours ago, but his condition did not improve. Now the question is being decided who will go in search of Tsunade-sama in order to return her to the village. Only she can stabilize his condition or cure him. However, he can no longer be a shinobi," Shisui told me, peeling an orange. In principle, I expected this outcome. If I had more chakra at that time, I would have been able to heal Sarutobi, but the channels cannot be restored even if you were at least 3 times a medical genius. "I can go get Tsunade. We know each other well, we can say that we are good friends. I can also assume that she can be made the new Hokage," I said thoughtfully, looking at the ceiling, simultaneously chewing orange slices. You yourself have not yet recovered enough to go somewhere. You know very well that I recover much faster than other people. I will only need a day for this. The wounds have already healed, and the chakra will be restored during the day. I can talk to the elders tomorrow. Most likely they will send Jiraiya on this mission, but I can persuade them so that I can also go. I have a better chance that the Slug Princess will agree to return," I said, looking at the guy. I assume that Shisui is not enthusiastic about my idea of going after Senju, but we still have no other choice. Either I go with my godfather and Tsunade returns to the village, or I don't go, and then Sarutobi-sama will no longer be able to help. Although I could try to cure him myself, but with his wounds and damage, I would need much more time to treat him, since I would filter my chakra. As a result, I will collapse again with exhaustion. Are you sure?" Shisui asked me, to which I just nodded in agreement, "Okay. But you will go talk to the elders only after I understand that you have fully recovered and after you promise me not to overexert yourself during the journey. I know very well that you are recovering quickly, but I'm still worried about you," Shisui said, to which I smiled a bright smile, and then kissed him. Taking our eyes off each other, I looked into the eyes of my beloved guy, and then said, "Okay, I'll do as you say, so don't worry, I'll be fine." A day later, I left the hospital, met with my students, and after that I went to the residence where the elders were. It didn't take long to persuade them. Just the phrase that I was Tsunade Senju's best friend and that I could persuade her to return to the village decided everything. The next day I met with my godfather. We discussed the travel plan and the date of departure. We also talked about a lot of things. I told my story and the reason why I look the way I do. She introduced me to her students and her fiancé. The godfather then talked for a long time with Shisui about something, but after that they both walked around happy, as if they had eaten too much sour cream. And besides, they are silent, like partisans. In general, having solved all the problems and nuances, we went after Tsunade, with the hope that our search would not last long. So I felt that our search would not end as quickly as we would like. We have been on the road for several days, but during all this time we have not been able to advance one step towards our goal. After passing a few more villages, I could not stand this mockery of myself and my nerves. At this rate, we won't find it in 100 years. Although we know where she can hang around, we have almost gone around all the places, there are a few left. Well, my fluffy tail feels that we won't find her there either. This Tsunade. All. I am tired of this. I exclaimed, nervously wagging my tail and flashing my eyes displeasedly towards my godfather. What happened, Naruto? Jiraiya asked, to which I just snorted and stamped my foot. No, well, that's not for now. What happened, Naruto? What else could happen except that we can't find the legendary loser? Jiraiya should know his former partner and friend better than me. And I should have found it much faster. But it turns out that we are walking through all the villages of the fire country and hitting the wall. RRR, how this infuriates me. But nothing happened. Godfather, you know Tsunade better than me, so why haven't we found her yet? I was indignant, blowing away my bangs that had fallen into my eyes. At this the old man only blinked his eyes in bewilderment. And I rolled my eyes at this. How everything infuriates me. In short, I'm tired of it. We will look for her like this until the end of time. We are going to Tanzaki City. As far as I remember, this city is famous for its entertainment and slot machines. Tsunade should be there. Fine. Then let's go there, since you are so sure of it, the godfather agreed with my proposal. I just chuckled at this, turned around and walked towards the famous city. Jiraiya followed me without further ado. During the entire journey we communicated little, and there was tension in the air. To be honest, I don't even know what to talk to him about. In fact, he had to take care of me from birth, after my parents died. However, he left the village without even taking me with him. I, of course, understand that in this matter not everything is so clean and smooth, and the bandaged hand of one disgusting old man is clearly felt. And I understand that he was simply prohibited from appearing in the villages until a certain point and in general from approaching me. But still, I could have at least subtly sent news that I am not alone and that I still have people close to me. I understand, but it's still somehow offensive. Naruto, forgive me old man, the old man broke the tense silence, looking at me out of the corner of his eye and scratching the back of his head, thereby disheveling his hair even more. For what? I asked, crossing my arms over my chest and closing my eyes. My tail wagged as always, thereby betraying my excitement. For leaving you alone. I had to stand my ground and put pressure on the council. However, they threatened me that if I disobeyed and took you with me, they would declare me a nuknin. I couldn't allow this to happen and I had to agree to leave you and leave the village. I have regretted my decision all these years and have constantly intended to come to Konoha and take you away. I knew how you lived, I knew about the hatred for the Jinchuriki, but I couldn't do anything about it, Jiraiya said sadly, lowering his head down. I stopped and looked at my godfather's back. My soul became very heavy from the realization of what my godfather had been experiencing all this time. My heart felt terribly painful, and another point of revenge appeared on one-eyed old man. I am more and more inclined to believe that he ruined the lives of many, if not the entire village. Godfather, I'm not angry with you, and I forgave you a long time ago. I understand perfectly well that you had to do this. Although it was a little offensive and painful, it was much more painful for you from the realization of what I had to go through. Yes, at first I was lonely. I didn't understand why everyone hated me and despised me. Why is everyone afraid and called demon? They beat me, called me names, periodically tried to kill me, refused to treat me, and inflated prices in stores by 3 or even 5 times. But thanks to this, I was able to become who I am now. I met someone who taught me everything. Thanks to him I began to look older, more mature, smarter and stronger. I also met my named older brother, best friend, loved one, and irreplaceable student. Everything I've been through has made me the person you see in front of you. Yes, with the death of my brother, friend, and loved one, I broke down, but thanks to this I became who I am. So don't burden your head with unnecessary worries, I said, looking into my godfather's eyes with a smile on my lips. Thank you, Jiraiya said, already patting me on the head, thereby disheveling my hair. Hey! You ruined my hair. Please don't do this again. I was indignant, smoothing the stray strands. Without saying another word, we headed to Tanzaku City, where Tsunade was 95% supposed to be. About 2 hours later we arrived in this small entertainment town. First of all, I sent my godfather to find us a hotel and book rooms. And at this time she headed to one eatery. As soon as I entered the establishment, I immediately came across a blonde head and a green Haori. Long time no see, Suchan. I greeted, calling the waiter to the table. Having ordered a couple more bottles of sake, I turned my gaze to an old friend whom I had not seen for about a year. Naru? Yes, a really long time ago. How are you doing? She asked, pouring me a bowl of sake. I drank it immediately, closing my eyes in bliss. Well, to be honest, a lot has happened since our last meeting. So, I returned to Konoha, became the second mentor of the Genin team. I told some events. Tsunade, after drinking a glass, looked at me with a puzzled look. And that's understandable. I kind of hate Konoha, but here I am back in a miserable village. Really? Why did you suddenly return there? The circumstances turned out that way. If it weren't for them, I wouldn't have been there. So what kind of circumstances are these? So the third, before I left, extracted a promise from me that I would return to the village when Sasuke's class graduated from the academy. I successfully missed this deadline and a team led by Kakashi Hatake and one girl was sent after us. Sasuke was supposed to join this team, and I was supposed to become the second mentor. Yes, and we need to slowly begin to carry out the plan for revenge on the old senile man. Something like this, I said in more detail, drinking another glass. By this time my order arrived, as well as Tsunade's order. Having poured another one and starting to fry the meat, we gave in to our thoughts. After some time, Tsunade decided to break the prolonged silence. So what are you doing here? So I have a small task from the elders. I left Sasuke in Konoha, he needs to complete his treatment. Besides, I'm not alone here, but with Jiraiya, I said, becoming more serious, putting aside the empty bowl. Tsunade, I would like you to return to the village with me. Why would I do this? A few days ago, during the third stage of the Chunin exam, the village was attacked by Orochimaru together with Sound and Sand. I pacified the one-tailed Jinchuriki, then helped the third defeat the snake, sealing him with a reliable seal that only I or any other Uzumaki who owns symbolic seals of the highest level can remove. However, during the battle, the third suffered greatly. I didn't have enough time and they managed to hit him. Once Orochimaru was sealed, I did my best to patch him up, but not completely. I won't be able to cure him any further. My chakra is poisonous. Before treatment I have to filter it. The elders gave me and Jiraiya an assignment. Find you and bring you to Konoha to help the Hokage. Tsu, please come back with me, I said, looking at my friend with pleading eyes. Naru, you know and understand perfectly well why I can't return. Konoha took away the two people closest to me. She did the same to you. And you're asking me to come back? The blonde was indignant, knocking back the sake in one gulp. I followed her example, deciding to tell the most important thing that happened during the time I was in the village. Sue, I understand everything perfectly. I didn't tell you the most important thing. There was one moment in Konoha, because of which I had a nervous breakdown and hysteria. I wanted to jump off the cliff. However, I was saved by Sasuke and my ANBU friend. But due to a breakdown, I found myself in a small coma. I met Rakuto-sen there, I said, drinking sake from the neck of the bottle. What? Is this some kind of joke? Tsunade asked in surprise, looking at me incredulously. No, not a joke. I wouldn't have believed it either if Rakuto's words weren't confirmed. And what did he say? He said that I was a child from a prophecy that would bring destruction or salvation to this world. However, due to the fact that I lost the people closest to me, and most importantly my anchor, my loved one, I broke down. Life didn't matter to me. However, you already know this. After interrupting briefly, I took a sip of sake to moisten my throat and, having eaten it with fried meat, I continued. Rakuto said that he would return one of those close to life and the other two later when needed. He gave me a choice of who to return, and I chose Shisui. Senin said that when I wake up, he will be waiting for me on the cliff where I almost jumped off. When I woke up, I didn't believe what happened. I thought it was a dream. But still I decided to check. And guess what? I asked, looking at my friend with happy eyes. She raised one eyebrow, as if asking, and I just smiled joyfully. Sue, when I came to the rock, I saw Shisui. He was taller and more mature than when he died. But he was alive and well. Other people think he faked his death to carry out a secret mission. After such a long time, he returned. Only Sasuke, Shisui himself, and I know the truth. Now I have told this secret to you. Tsunade, please, let's go back. I'd like to introduce you to my fiancé, Shisui. You will be able to cure the third. He will appoint a successor for himself, because he will no longer be a shinobi, and you will become the head of the hospital. Okay. I will return, but only because you asked me to. Besides, I want to see the one who rose from the dead. At that moment, Jiraiya entered. After inspecting the establishment, he purposefully headed in our direction. Long time no see, Tsunade. How are you doing? The godfather asked cheerfully, looking at the blonde. She, looking at the new face, chuckled, knocked over the stack, and then said cheerfully. By your prayers. Why did you come? I came with this young lady to get you, he said, sitting down next to me. And then pour yourself a drink from my bottle. Mine. I wish I could order a new one. I glared at him menacingly, but he, such an infection, did not react at all. So what? Are you coming back to Konoha with us? No, well, this is completely impudent. So, I did all the work, and he came with everything ready. You have neither shame nor conscience, godfather. I was indignant, looking displeasedly at Jiraiya. My tail twitched nervously, betraying my emotions. Well, he's always been like this, Naru. Just ignore him, Tsunade said as she continued to drink. But I lost all desire, because of my godfather. Easy to say, hard to do. Okay. I think it's time for us to go to the hotel. We need to head out tomorrow. By the way, Shizune, how are you? It turned out somehow awkward, I said, turning to the girl sitting next to the blonde. She smiled in response, hugging the pig to herself. It's okay, Naruto-sama. Only I'm a little tired of constantly moving from one place to another and hiding from the people to whom Tsunade-sama owes money. Haha, here's another reason to return to the village. I don't think your creditors will dare to come to one of the great villages, I said, looking at my friend. Well, I think, in principle, we have nothing more to do here. We need to quickly sort everything out and return to the village. I hope that Tsuno will be able to put the Hokage on his feet, at least until he names his successor. I can only hope it won't be one of the elders. Otherwise, the village will lose its leader on the very first day. Okay, I think we should wrap it up. We will set out tomorrow at dawn. Agree. Then, see you tomorrow, Suna, I said, getting up from my seat and putting a few bills on the table. It was nice to see you. Godfather, let's go, bowing to Tsunade and Shizune, and also taking Jiraiya by the scruff of the neck, I left the establishment and headed towards the hotel where, in theory, my godfather was supposed to book rooms for us. Hey, maybe you'll let me go already? The old man wheezed, trying to free himself from my grip. I just chuckled at this, not paying enough attention to his attempts to free himself. I know, let him go. Give him free rein, and he will go to the hot springs for this so-called collection of information. But somehow I don't really want to catch him later and run away from the angry girls. No. Knowing you, you will immediately dare to peek. So hang still until I get you to the hotel. That's where you come from. You're fading away. I'll put a barrier on your number. Hey. Why so cruel? And don't peek, but collect very important information. Yeah, of course. Collect information for my perverted books, I snorted, looking askance at my godfather. You'll be telling someone else something wrong. And spare me your fees, I said, while hitting him with my tail as a preventive measure. Oh. I wish I could get back to Shisui's village as soon as possible. In this short time I have already become bored. And the successes of Sasuke, Aiko, and Sakura are worth checking out. That's right, we need to talk to Tsuna so that she can take Sakura into her care. Still, they have the same call, and Tsuna herself can teach her a lot. So unnoticed by myself, immersed in my thoughts, I did not notice how we reached the hotel. Having risen to the desired floor and entered Jiraiya's room, I let go of his skin, immediately starting to make seals with one hand. Walking up to the door and touching it with my hand, I said. Fuel Jutsu, sealing space. The first level, after pronouncing the technique, the room shimmered with several colors, symbols crawled from the point of contact between my hand and the door, enveloping the entire room. A minute later, the last symbol took its place, after which it blinked and disappeared. What kind of seal is this? Jiraiya asked, looking at my manipulations. Turning to him and looking skeptically at my godfather, I said. Will you definitely be able to understand what I will explain about the installed seal? Who do you think I am? I am one of the best printmakers in the whole world. Of course I can understand what you explain to me. He exclaimed, looking at me indignantly. I couldn't help but chuckle as I watched his performance. Jiraiya, it's one thing to understand ordinary seals, which can be studied by any shinobi who has some understanding of them. Another thing is trying to understand the seals of the Uzumaki clan, which only members of my clan can do. So I'll ask you again. Are you absolutely sure that you can understand the seal I set? I explained, and at the same time asked the same question again. To which she received a confident nod. Okay then. I'll try to explain it in a simple way. This seal consists of 3 levels. Is rank B+. The technique of sealing space seems to separate the sealed room, house, place, etc. in a separate space. The first level is a kind of protection. Anyone who is sealed in this case in a room cannot leave the sealed area. He won't even be able to open the door, while the person who applied the seal will be able to easily enter and exit through the door without opening it. A stranger will not be able to open it, considering that there is no one in the room, or the occupant has simply closed himself and does not want to see anyone. The enemy will not be able to break through it, no matter how strong he is. The second level involves separating the sealed room from the main building and casting a powerful illusion. In other words, if the sealed person in the room opens the door, there will be a void in front of him even if he opens the window. If a stranger or enemy opens the door, he will see an ordinary, unremarkable room, without anyone's things. It feels like the room is not residential at all. And no one checked into it, if we are talking about a hotel room. The third level is an order of magnitude higher. The sealed room will be in a separate space. You can't leave from the inside, you can't come in from the outside. The door will simply disappear from the corridor and everyone will forget about the sealed room. And if anyone remembers, they won't be able to find it. Something like this, I finished explaining, looking carefully at my godfather and watching his reaction. And there really was something to see. His eyes were bulging, his mouth was open, and he himself did not move throughout my entire story. Yes, very unusual of him. But recently he said that everyone would understand that he is one of the best seal masters in the whole world. But in reality... Godfather, how are you there? Alive? I asked him, waving my hand in front of him, thereby trying to bring him to his senses. Naruto, are you saying that this technique seals the room in a separate unknown space? Asked the godfather, after 5 minutes of silence. I just nodded in agreement and only my air betrayed my irritation at the stupid questions being asked. But Jiraiya didn't seem to pay any attention to this. And you call this technique B+ rank? Yes, everything here is A+, and even rank S. It may be so for you, but not for Uzumaki. This sealing technique in my clan is learned by all children who have reached the age of 8. It is quite simple, does not require symbolism, drawing out seals using chakra through the air, and it is even unnecessary to combine two types, symbolism, and folding seals manually. This is one of the initial techniques that children should know. However, despite all its simplicity, this seal requires quite a lot of chakra. Therefore, only Uzumaki can perform it. I explained in more detail. Honestly, this seal can be learned by anyone with large chakra reserves. For example, the Kage of the village. However, they can only apply one level of seal at a time, and it doesn't matter which one. After this, half of the reserve, and often more than half, will simply disappear. Yes, and maintaining the seal requires chakra, although not in such quantities. Therefore, after the imposition, they will not be able to continue the battle, if any was fought. It's clear. But why did you put such a seal? So as not to let you out until we leave. I'll tell you later. Where can I catch you? I'm not going to run all over the city and all the eateries and hot springs in search of your carcass, I said indignantly, wagging my tail irritably. And yes, I confiscated all the alcohol from the minibar, after which I turned around and walked out through the door without looking back. Entering my room, I immediately lay down on the bed and passed out. The day was very difficult and eventful. And tomorrow you need to get up early to have time to get yourself in order before heading back to the village. The morning came hard. And this is not because I didn't get enough sleep, not because I have a terrible headache, and not even because my whole body aches. No, this also plays a very important role in a difficult morning. However, the most important thing is that a wild scream sounded in my head, thanks to which I jumped from the bed to the ceiling and fell face down on the floor, while getting tangled in the blanket. You may be asking what kind of scream was in my head? To be honest, I would also like to know the answer to this question. As it turned out later, the problem was Kurama. He, such a clown, decided to wake me up in this way. You see, he heard my thoughts that I wanted to get up early, so he fussed over, the red-haired pest. Are you completely crazy, you flea ball of fur? I was mentally indignant, turning to the fox. By the way, I don't have fleas. My fur is smooth and soft and there is not a single lump. So don't offend my magnificence with ridiculous phrases. No, well, this is actually arrogance. It seems his conscience got lost somewhere along the way of birth, never reaching the owner of the carcass. Although, what am I talking about? Kurama was born without a conscience and cannot have one. He is the spitting image of an impudent mug. He does what he wants, says what he wants, but thinks so without knowing what. Hey, I actually have a conscience. The fox was indignant, in an offended voice. Ha, he has a conscience. Somehow I didn't notice it. Yes? Do you have a conscience? Why didn't you use it when you woke me up in such a barbaric way? I asked indignantly, barely getting up from the floor and heading to the bath. Perhaps in this case it temporarily switched off, Ku snorted, and I could see him turning away offended. Pfft, what a sissy, look at him. Okay, thank you, of course, for waking me up, but next time, be more tactful, I said, going into the bath and turning on the contrast shower. A few minutes later, I turned off the water, got out of the bath, dried myself, then washed my face and brushed my teeth. Entering the room, I unpacked clean clothes and began combing my hair, braiding it into 2 low ponytails. After getting dressed and looking at myself in the mirror, I was satisfied. Having made the bed and also sealed all my things in a scroll, I left the room and closed the door behind me. A couple of minutes later, I was already in my godfather's room. Look, he's sleeping without his hind legs. And there's no wind in his mouth. Well, we'll wake him up now, hee hee hee. Company, rise, the 4th Shinobi War has begun. I shouted at the top of my lungs right in his ear. This made him jump and land on his ass, but already on the floor. He began to look around, clearly not noticing my beloved. And someone else told me that it was I who shamelessly woke you up in a barbaric way. And he accused me of having no conscience. And she did exactly the same thing with her godfather. Well, where is the justice here? The fox was indignant. I just giggled at this, without commenting too much. Well, you compared. Wake me up by screaming in my head or wake up the old pervert? I retorted. The fox did not answer anything. Well, okay, he doesn't want to answer and there's no need to. Naruto. Jiraiya shouted, finally noticing me. I just shrugged innocently and looked away. I do not know anything. Godfather, you better get up and start cleaning yourself up. In the meantime, I'll remove the seal. We'll have to go soon to meet Suna and Shizuna, I said, approaching the door. Having formed the release seals, I touched the door, releasing a small pulse of chakra. 10 minutes later, the seal was removed and Jiraiya finished cleaning himself up. Wait a little, I need to seal things, said the godfather. Having said this, he began to carry out what was said. A couple of minutes later, we were already going down to the reception to hand over the keys. Leaving the hotel, we headed to the meeting place. Along the way, Jiraiya tried to sneak away, but I stopped all his attempts by grabbing him by the collar. So we reached the exit from the city. Tsunade and Shizune were already waiting for us there. Approaching them, I greeted them, continuing to hold Jiraiya by the collar. Good morning, Suna, Shizune, I said, waving my free hand. Good morning, Naru. And Jiraiya, the blonde greeted me, raising one eyebrow in surprise. Oh, this. The godfather tried to sneak away to the hot springs. I didn't let him in last night, sealing his room in space. So he tried to get away, I said, letting him go. He fell to the ground and then said indignantly. Naruto. Stop dragging me around like a beaten dog. Stop your perversions. If you don't stop, you'll get stronger than from Tsunade. I said, looking at him with a dissatisfied look. My ears twitched and my tail swung from side to side in irritation. Okay, it's time for us to move out. We need to return to the village as soon as possible. Otherwise, we may be late, I said, looking at my companions. Nodding to each other, we set off. Home to Konoha. The end, guys.